Hello and welcome to another week of House Rivalries. I'm your host Delta, and with me I got my lovely friends. How are you doing, Cinder?
Yeah, we're doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice here going into this. You tell me a little bit about who we're going to watch today.
So we're going to be watching a match against Gamers Origin versus Intrepid Fox. So far in the brackets, we can see that Gamers Origin has a 2-0 record, and as well as Intrepid Fox. They're both positioned at the top of the brackets right now for this event. So this should be a really high caliber match today.
Yeah, it's been looking really good, and this is a House Rivalries Cup where different teams from all over Europe have been invited to play for some fame and glory. And of course, it's a Swiss bracket, so meaning that you play versus people at the same score. So the winner of today's match is going to be someone with a clean slate going into round four. And it's looking great for both teams anyway. Both teams have been playing a lot of, let's say, rough matchups, most likely because all these teams that we have invited is cream of the crop.
Oh, without a doubt, we have just one of the highest expectation teams coming in was Nordavind, and Intrepid Fox actually beat Nordavind 3-1 last week. It was a very impressive match. So we're already seeing how the high level of competition for this series. So this Swiss is far from over. We're several rounds to go, but even already, it's the expectations have been turned on their head.
Yeah, and great to watch all these awesome games. And now we just had a few nerfs that tossed out a couple of days ago, and people had to adjust their lineup, what they might bring to this conquest format. Uh, Tell me a little bit about the text they have brought.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting seeing what this is the first weekend that we have after the last set of nerfs to Hunter's Mark and Spellstone, etc. And it's kind of interesting to see how the decks are evolving. Gamers Origin brought a mid-range hunter that they've swapped out the Hunter's Mark and just found room for more threats. They have one copy of Revenge of the Wild in that deck, which is the spell that revives all the minions that have the beasts that have died this turn. Along with a copy of Headhunter's Hatchet, which is the 2/2 weapon for 2 that I believe gets 1 durability if you're controlling a beast. And they're also running a copy of King Mukla because why not? I mean, you bring the king, you best not miss, right? So they got that. Otherwise, it's a fairly standard looking mid hunter, 2 copies of Dire Frenzy, and topping out with the Deathstalker Rexar, no copy of Zul'jin. And then they also brought in Odd Secret Mage, which is the more aggressive form of that deck, running Leroy, running Counterspell and explosive runes, along with 1 copy of Secret Keeper. Again, King Mukla, because the king just finds his way in. And Stargazer Luna, Bitter Tide Hydra, which is a card that hasn't been seen in quite a while. And then topping out at the top end with Jan'alai the Dragonhawk, just because the only thing that's better than King Mukla is a Ragnaros. And then you also have Odd Rogue and Egg Paladin to round out their lineup. And then Intrepid Fox has a mid-range hunter. Also, they have a 4 minion cloning gallery priest that just goes all in on the damage. And then they brought even Paladin and even Warlock. Even Paladin, when you take out equality, you just have room for more threats and more room for extra oozes and Valinir alongside Mojo Master Zihi. And then the even Warlock is running both Zihi and Nerubian Unraveler so that you just do not play spells for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it sounds like they've been thinking a lot about this lineup. We've seen the bands coming out already. Gamers Origins Mage out of the question, so we won't see any odd mage today, and then even paladin from Fox. So we will see some cool matchups going forward. And seeing as this is conquest, you have to win with every deck. So the winner will have to play all their deck to their best proficiency. And it will be interesting to see here now. The players are getting ready though, and we're just waiting to.
Hello? Player, and you can see that their aggro, the lineup is fairly aggressive as well. And then you also have Athanas, who is a player that has been kind of doing the rounds recently, has been having some pretty good results in Battle Rift, had a pretty good showing in WSG as well, which I had the pleasure to cast. At least I can't remember if we did it together, but and I think that also came started against really strong roster, Gallant, Shrek, and Den. Super strong rosters. I think overall, I think we're just in for one hell of a series right here.
Definitely, and we are going into the first game as it seems right now. It is the Priest versus the Rogue. So that's the Cloning Gallery Priest versus the Old Rogue. And as you said, we haven't seen much Old Rogue. So let's see what they can make of it.
So this matchup was very favored towards the Odd Rogue before the nerfs. Obviously, Cobra did help you push a lot of damage. But the cards like Heskafog are still unchanged. And something to note about this version of the Gallery Priest, as we can now also see on the screen, you see right now there's a Silex and a Radial Elemental in hand, is that this is not the massive amount of minions. There's no Gilded Gargoyles, there are no Grizzlies, no Lich Kings, none of these minions that tend to flood the pool. This is a combo deck built specifically around the OTK combo and having very consistent resurrections. And I don't know if you have anything else to point out about that deck. As we can see right now, the hand from
Not about the Cloning Gallery Priest for sure, but Zikora or sorry. Yeah, exactly. Gamers Origin has a very bad start here with the Rogue. They have so many wonders in their deck. They run Argent Squire, Crystallizer, Diamol, Firefly, South Sea Deckhand, and they got nothing. So that's a really weak start, and we already see a great start for the Priest here. Yeah,
so,
the Deadly Poison pickup, not that great either, because you can't even kill the Radiant Element.
No, so the thing about this as well is that now you have a very hard time getting stuff on board, and you would actually really like to just punt down this fleshling here, but the problem with this is the fact that it gets contested simply by one Spirit Lash and the Radiant Elemental being on board, so you cannot really do that. And we see here Hawkeye decides to just go for a very quick Shadow Visions here. Master Spell, Essence, and Listed Diamond Spellstone, obviously all three cards that have very different applications, and with the answer in hand to this Handstand Fuck being a Shadow at Death, I feel like we might just see this Master Spell being skipped for a higher tempo play in either Essence or the Lesser Diamond Spellstone. So this is going to be very interesting for sure, because there's a lot of different things considering. I also hear the Greek side trying to just conversate through and figure out what they're actually going to do here.
Yeah, I'd say you'd go for the Shadow Essence here. Diamond Spellstone, not that great yet. Would take a while. The Master Spell, not that useful right now, but the Shadow Essence is a good tempo play, and you get that Resurrect going, the Resurrect value. So it's rather important to get that quite early in the game. But we'll see what the Greek team Intrepid Fox thinks of this. And on the other hand, yeah, that 4/4, you say the answer is Enhance the Shadow or Death, but you can only use it next turn, so that might be an issue.
He's right now. They have to make a decision soon. Like, if they do go with that Essence, you see that right now, just go for that heal onto the minions, make sure that there's no clean trade or potential of a Deadly Poison just killing that Radiant Elemental in one hit here. And now, Gamers Origin are in a bit of a troublesome situation, because they do know that there is a Shadow of Death in the deck of the Intrepid Fox lineup, so they have to figure out if they do want to play around that directly, and they can't really do that without getting rid of without swing with the weapon. So they have to just clear up this this Radiant Elemental somehow, and most likely will be looking towards a Vicious Fleshing on the board as well. So with the color already in hand, they have to figure out what's the best for them to guarantee this Fungal Mancer hitting next turn, because just because like the implications of what happens if they don't stake this Fungal Mancer, because this Fungal Mancer is just very, very important. We see right here, just go face, play down that Henchman Fuck, and it's going to be, I was assuming, is it going to be, so it's going to be Redagger Crystallizer here. It does not want to commit that Vicious Fleshing.
This surprises me, because it's a very safe bet to play the Vicious Fletchling here. If you are afraid of the Shadow or Death, then your Fletchling survives. If you are afraid of something like the Ziliax, which is also in hand, then your Vicious Fletchling or your Henchman Thug survive. So you are guaranteed to have 2 targets for the Fungomancer. However, now you only get left with a 1/3 Crystallizer if that either of these cards are used. The Ziliax is actually a very large threat at this point. So I'm kind of surprised that they take it slow, but can you take it slow in this matchup? Can you take it slow against Priest?
I'd say it's a very hard one to call. Obviously, they do know that this is open deck list, so they do know that there are 2 copies of Mass Hysteria in the deck, which also might be one of the reasons why they decided to just skip the Vicious Fletchling, because obviously Mass Hysteria would come down and could potentially be a massive punish, and you would not like that. And you see here, this massive weapon with the green skin. I have to figure out if they want to hold the damage or not, because I do have the Deadly Poison, which could in fact mean straight damage over the course of the next 7 turns, but decide against that, just decide that they want to deal the damage now. And now the Greek side has yet another decision to make, because they can just commit the Ziliax down. It's very clean, get rid of the 1/3, potentially even blocks out that 5/4 plus weapon swing, blocks upwards of 8 damage, and will heal you for 6 over the course of these 2 turns here. But they could also just clean out the Shadow Essence, just get that big minion into their resurrection pool, but decide just take it slow, try to clean the board as nice as possible, potentially have that 5/5 bloody stick on the following turn here.
And these guys are both 2-0 at the moment, these teams. So it's important that they win this. If they win this, they are fairly, well, not assured yet of a spot in the top 6, but they're really close. So this matchup is very important for both teams. And of course, they can permit to lose one series, but the earlier you lose a series in this tournament, the harder it will count towards the end. So if you want to go through on tiebreakers, you cannot really permit to lose a series already. So these guys really thinking through. And of course, 3 guys piloting each player in this case. They think about these turns a lot, and that might be why some turns take a bit longer or are a bit clunky towards the end, because they're all shouting in one guy's ear, like, do this or do that, and we'll see how it turns out in the end.
I think that was actually a very interesting point you made, Abby. So this is a team tournament. They are in a call, 3 people for the entire tournament, like for each team. And I was talking with Greenshi about this last week on the House Rivalries broadcast. You see, this is going to be a coin psychic stream just to get as much pressure off the board as possible, about how the dynamic actually works when you are in these team tournaments, because it really depends which style of people you have. Because he was talking about when he did HGG, that they have people that were very dominant in terms of what they were very vocal, and then they had very people that were very specific mindsets. People that were very good at tracking stuff. It's just like kind of assigned roles. But something that's different from HCG, so this is the fact that HCG, they had to turn like that to swap pilot of the deck. They do not have to do this in here. It's going to be the same pilot for all of the entire best out of 5. So that means they can assign these roles much more rigidly, in a sense. So like the roles don't change, which is could be really good if you have a team with very good communication skills. See right here, Gamers Origin just kind of just trying to get there somehow, and we see if they should want a second Psychic Scream is in the hand here for.
Yeah, there's a second Psychic Scream, but there is no Mass Hysteria, so I think the Gamers Origin will be rather happy with that. Their Flappy Bird probably survives unless it indeed gets screamed. But would you already use a second Scream here, or would you just go with the Shadow Essence? How threatening is this board? Well, you're on 12 HP, so quite threatening.
Something to note is that there are no extra taunts in this deck. The Silex is the only taunt minion, compared to, let's say, a regular version, like the more standard version of Xerix cloning Gallery Priest. So the essence here is super risky, because if this fletchling hits face and gets Winfrey with, let's say, a buff from Fungalmancer, then you're just going to die on the spot here. And with the nerf to Copeland, there's a lot less damage coming from the hand, which means that you can take a few more risks in terms of just cleaning up boards. You'll be much more lenient about that and just trying to play around your life so much more. And you can see right now, again, Gamers Origin just kind of trying to figure out what they actually could do, because that back of the Marina draw is not necessarily super bad, because it's going to be pretty solid next turn. But with the Mars Stable Element in hand, they really wanted to have some cheap cards that they could just dump and just draw as many cards as possible from this Myrus. And they're trying to figure out what's the lowest tempo play they can get away with here. Just, do they play the Void Ripper first? Do they hold the Void Ripper, just potentially have some more damage with boss they can stake on the follow-up? Or do they even do something like Void Ripper Fungalmancer and just get Anduin?
I really like playing Myra here together with the Void Ripper, and of course you play it in this order because you don't have to worry about overdrawing if your deck's empty, which is going to be the case after this Myra. So that's kinda good for Gamers Origin here. They did not get the Leroy, so that's quite a shame, but they did get one Vicious Fledgling and a bunch of one-drops. It's not terrible, it's not great, at least you can get a lot of board, and you've seen both Psychic Screams already.
Yep. So this Velen here is actually going to be pretty huge. So a thing about this deck and the way it functions is that with the Vivid Nightmare, you have a lot of very interesting plays you can go for in terms of killing your opponent. You see right here, Hawkeye's now, Hawkeye, in terms of Fox here, is just trying to figure out whether or not the Spirit Less is just used now or later, and just gets that 8 healing out of the way. And something to note about the Myros in this matchup as well is the fact that the priest deck just wants to kill you somehow, so taking a lot of damage on you just for fatigue is, generally speaking, a pretty bad thing, because they just accelerate your opponent's clock, and with these draws here, it's not too good. And normally the situations you would be looking for stuff like Cold Blood and Deadly Poison, but like Deadly Poison they've used one of already, and Cold Blood obviously no longer legal. So now they have to figure out how to kill their opponent over the course of 3 turns, so potentially even less than that.
Yeah, and this Prophet Valen is going to throw a spanner in the works, because we see that Eternal Servitude as well. They will probably clear the Prophet Valen this turn, and then next turn it will be back. You have to clear it again, and you are on very limited resources, so you can't really permit it. As you said, 3 turns is probably the max you can still survive. What are you going to do to kill your opponent in 3 turns without him healing back up so much through Prophet Valen? This is a very hard challenge at the moment. I think going white on board and just YOLOing, hoping they have no more removal. And apparently, yeah, keeping as much board as possible seems very good in this case.
This is an interesting decision from the side of the Gamers Origin here, because they just allowed themselves to take lethal damage, because with Velen and Vivid Nightmare just means 20 damage Mind Blast.
Yeah, that's that.
And they could have played around this.
But would they win if they played around this? I don't think so. I don't think they would have won if they played around this.
No.
Because, well, if they did play around this, then Well, they wouldn't have enough pressure to finish it in 3 turns. The healing would be too much. You could kind of guarantee that the Valen would be back. So you had to put on a lot of pressure, and then you just hope that they don't have that Mind Blast.
Yeah, but something's noticed that they could have taken the trip with the free one token, right, and just made sure that did not. You just take the 5 damage. Obviously, you're still gonna die in what seems like 2 touches through the natural state of the fatigue situation. But if that was the play, but it just gives you more time to figure out a board that could potentially just get there. You get the chance to tame down the Fungal Mancer, push some more damage. I think there's merits of both of them, but you also saw a lot of cards just being held in hand. So you kind of know that there are some sort of combination there, but I'm not completely sure if that's the correct or the bad thing. And one of the main things about cloning Gallery Priest is that it's super, super annoying to play against. I'm not saying that it's super OP or anything. It's just the way that the way you have to play it against it can very often just make you do really, really stupid things, because you can often just overtrade into their minions. You can often just leave it up when you should have killed it, because it's a very hard thing to gauge how much damage they have in hand. So yeah, now this matchup is. I'm excited for this matchup though. This is an interesting one.
Entirely different than what we saw last game. This is going to be an even Warlock with some shenanigans based on mana, with the Nerubian Unraveler and Mojo Masazi going up against this Egg Belly. That's kind of weird as well. I have no clue how this is going to play out.
No, so obviously with the removal of equality, or not removal, but like the nerf of equality means that it's no longer fit for a space in the stack. Obviously makes it a lot harder for you to answer early giants and the likes of that. Obviously you have to wait out until you can shrink rail and potentially do stuff like that. So it becomes a lot harder for you to get rid of these things, but I feel like the Paladin has a lot of very, very interesting things it can do once it manages to take, let's say, the Spirit Singer to just do whatever they want. But turn 3 Giant is on the cards here for Intrepid Fox, and that's going to be followed up by a Twilight Drake should they want it. And this is looking like one of the strongest power openers I've seen from Evil Warlock in a long time.
Yeah, and the idea behind this Even Warlock is getting on board, getting that pressure on, and then closing out with some large threats when you're low on HP. On the other hand, the Paladin wants to get their max very large, like the egg, then it dies, and then you recall it with the army.
The Kangos
Antlers army, yeah, exactly. So then you have a huge board that the Warlock can never deal with. In that position, I'd say Paladin is favored in this matchup.
Yeah, honestly, I've found something that's very interesting about the way gamers are decided to navigate this early game is the fact that they chose to use their Teleram, often seen as a card that is very, very important to combo with. Just just copy the loot horse, like would be able to deal with this giant, and that is just very, very strong recognition of this matchup from Gamer's Origin. Obviously, when you bring a deck that is so different from any other standard deck, that like the Mechanoic Paladin, you need to know about these small things, like how do you navigate this, how do you navigate that. And this turn itself is actually also really interesting because there are 3 different lines that I see here that they can take. So like, which one do you like the most of these 3 lines?
Okay, so one of the problems that we see in the in the other hand is the Spellbreaker. Whatever you do is probably going to get countered by the Spellbreaker. So I'd say go for the least risky play, which is Call to Arms.
And I actually really like this. So the reason why I like this is like this is the highest blowout potential play. And you've just seen a giant, so you know you have a little bit more time, and there's potentially only 1 Spellbreaker in the deck. If you recall, obviously it's an open deck list, so they know the specific amount of text and stuff like that. And there are double Spellbreaker in here, and maybe they just value their Umbra lower than they value their Egg, because they can just trigger Egg in various ways, and they're just trying to bang on there not being that 1 Spellbreaker in the situation.
Yeah, but this is a nice bait, if you could say it like that, because you also have the Spike Ridge Steed. So if the silence is used on the Spirit Singer Umbra, yeah, you're pretty happy. But we just saw an answer being drawn. If you play the Vulgar Homunculus, coin the Spellstone, then you can clear the Umbra while still keeping your silence. So that's a very strong turn, and it looks like Intrepid Fox is going for this play.
Yeah, they're just gonna go for the coin spells, like the homunculus into Spellstone. That's just, That's fine. And again, now so this is actually a little bit of a different take on deck. So the thing is that the thing that's interesting about this paladin is the fact that it has so many different strings to play on. It's not just centered around getting massive egg boards. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why the deck exists, but it has the ability to just switch up their game plans and just to do. I mean, they can play fairly aggressively. They can play very controlly, just depending on what the matchup requires them to do. So maybe they feel like the game plan they need in this matchup is not going to be completely screwed over by them losing their Umbra.
Yeah, I agree. They have so many resources in the deck to do wonky stuff with, like the Prince we saw earlier, being used to get card draw, and now we see the Spirit Singer Umbra as kind of a lightning rod, not very successfully, but still. Yeah, I think this deck overall is pretty strong. But would you go take the risk to play the egg now?
I think so, because you're just seeing them not like they're just seeing one removal spell already, and you have the Kangos and Lasami in hand, so you will get the egg back at some point regardless, which I think is totally fine. And also, even if it gets silenced and you don't get the 8/8, you do have access to just like nice bodies to stick down that Spike Steel onto. So I think overall that is still super solid. Obviously the Spellbreaker is super tasty for Intrepid Fox, but at some point you just have to take the risk and just say that there are two characters Spellbreakers. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't, and then you just play into it, and that's just life. And they can even clear out the deck a little bit more with the Call to Arms if they want to. Instead, they have a lot of different things, and the thing is that Call to Arms would get punished by an AoE, which would be either Defile or Hellfire, and those cards that's 4 copies rather than just the 2 cards of the Spellbreaker. So I think just getting this down now and just praying that it sticks around is just the best thing you can do here.
And Intrepid Fox doesn't even really have to silence it yet, do they? They can just wait out a turn. What's the worst that could happen? It could die. That's problematic, I guess. But what's the worst that could happen? Let's see what will Intrepid Fox do here. I think tapping into Twilight Drake isn't even that bad. It gives you such a strong board.
It's tapping this way. Yeah, okay. This is actually interesting because if there's a cube in hand here for Gamer's Origin, they do get access to that 8/8, but there's no cube. So now it's actually going to be a massive punish if they decide to jam the Spagger Seat down onto this act, because I mean that's just 2 massive resurrections gone in one second, you could say, which would be very annoying, right?
But what else can they do? It's not true Silver Champion doesn't do anything, and I have the feeling they know, Gamers Origin knows what's going to happen. If they buff the egg, it will get silenced, and they also know that they can't really deal with that. Oh, 2 Pyromancers, and that's not what you want to see, because there goes your combo with the Shrink Ray.
That's just both of your board clears really gone. I think the 2 card clears, just Maul is gone by that. And right now, Hellfire would just be absolutely detrimental. But the thing is that obviously, if they go for Hellfire to clear up this board state, they would not be able to silence your rack, and that's something you also have to consider. And you can see right here, it's going for this loot. So the problem with the loot holder is the fact that it opens up the file, which is probably what they're considering to play around right here, because they just want it to be Hellfire or nothing. But again, it's just not a super good spot for this friend's side, so they just jam down the Righteous Protector instead of this loot holder.
Also opens the board up to Defile, but they have to trade first. Oh, there's a Mountain Giant. That's amazing. Feels like a Hellfire turn to me. It's so cost efficient to Hellfire here. You could even tap Hellfire and maybe play the Sun Fury if you feel ballsy. It feels like Intrepid Fox is in the driver's seat right now. They can do whatever they want, and it still feels good.
Yeah, and something to note here is that as well, if they were to choose to put down a Spagger Seat onto this act doesn't get popped, then that's actually a pretty big deal, because then the Spellbreaker is still active. And also something we need to consider is the fact that Games Origins are actually down to 15 HP, and that is not that high of a life total, considering that they do not have access to their Ufa just yet. Sure, you get a 2/8 taunt in the way, potentially following up with a 2/6, but now this card coming from all the side of the left of the hand here for Intrepid Fox will just be an absolutely detrimental card to face for this Gamer's Origin side.
Yeah, and now you can play Mountain Giant into Spellbreaker. You know that there's no easy way to clear large minions for Gamer's Origin. So going even wider on the board, even though you have the feeling it isn't really necessary, is not that bad. You are practically guaranteed to have lethal if you play the Mountain Giant first here. And of course, this is the best Spellbreaker target you could ever wish for. What do you think? Would you play the Mountain Giant here?
I think that you've had a few cards being held in the hand of Gamer's Origin for a while that you're not completely sure what are. And right now, I think even just silencing the Egg and going face puts up Lethal on board with the Hellfire as well. So I feel like you don't need to commit the Giant, but you can't just commit the Giant if you expect this game to be over next turn regardless. They go for the tap Giant with Sting. Obviously the correct ordering, just trying to get as many cards out there as possible. And the Spellbreaker is going to be absolutely annoying here, and that's just going to be... So now they have to figure out if to trade off what to do, because they could just remove the Egg just to play around this potential second Spectre Steed, decide against that, and Kangor is normally a pretty nice tool in terms of healing, but it's just not enough in the situation, and Stringray right now would be the only out, and wouldn't even be an out per se, because, I mean, they would heal for 2, but you see that Games just decide to scoop it up, and that would just mean that 2-0 Intrepid Fox right now, and we might be looking at a clean sweep, which would be very, very interesting.
I'm pretty sure they'll play the Hunter next, as we saw them switch between the first and the second game as well from Gamers Origin. We already go into the next game. They are so quick to decide on what they're playing next. And of course, from Intrepid Fox, we'll see the Hunter for sure. Now they stick with the Paladin, as it seems, which you'll see soon. And also, they still have trust in this Egg Paladin. And I must say, they were kind of unlucky, or more like the opening for Intrepid Fox was ridiculously strong. We saw Mountain Giant into a Twilight Drake, into another Twilight Drake, and that's exactly what you want to do as even Warlock. Just spam those large minions and force your opponent to deal with them, which the opponent obviously couldn't. So let's see what turns out here. How do you like this Hunter deck?
I'm a little bit of a on the fence type of guy. I never really was a big fan of this style of this Hunter build itself. I think that it's a very good deck. I think it's very, very strong, and I feel like it's one of the best decks in the meta. And obviously, it didn't really get as hit by the nerf to Hunter's Mark as a lot of other Hunter archetype potentially would have, and the nerf to Spellstone, etc. So basically, they're just playing a very stock list. They being Intrepid Fox in the situation, just playing double cannon shot diamos and just caught the Hunter's Mark for a life ring, just to bring a little bit of extra damage to the table. And yeah, there's so much else to say here. This is just all about having the good openness, and it doesn't look super good for either side just yet. Diamond on one is obviously always good. Coin Companion could speed things up very massively here, depending on what we do see coming out of it. I was fine the Huffer, and that's actually super massive because there's no clean answer for that just yet, and that's just 4 damage going to the face unless the Greek side decides to play around Consecration by trading in the 4-1. But for the 4 damage, just worth way more here, and pretty straightforward turn here for Gamers Origin. Just try to attack into the hero power, which will just prove this to be a very, very straightforward turn here. Just trying to stay alive until they can clear this board out, and Master's Call here, pretty solid.
Yeah, I really like the coin Animal Companion last turn into Master's Call. You invest in a stronger board using your coin, but you can refill your hand with the Master's Call the next turn. And this, do you really want to use Consecration on a Huffer and a 1-1 token? Not entirely sure, apparently you don't. Which needs, yeah, because there's only 1-1 left, so yeah, of course you're not going to consecrate that. And now you have to play Life Drinker or something. This doesn't look too good yet, and the Paladin is not a deck that's going to go very wide on board until it's too late. Like, if this Paladin goes wide, then you probably already lost.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that fact. That statement. Now, something noticed that also something that's a little bit annoying for Intrepid Fox is that there were no spring paws found in their opening hands, and that means that this Hyena in hand right now will just stake as a 2-2 for a while. And this Paladin as a deck just has a lot of ways to answer Hyenas, to have the Consecrations answer the 2-2, to have the Crucible Damages answer anything as well until it gets above the 4 HP mark, obviously. They do have a lot of things. I also really want to point out the meat wagon here, just sticking around, is super huge because it's the one-way ticket to getting the egg out of that deck, and obviously the egg being the main part of this entire deck. So obviously a very, very important card to get out there as soon as possible here. And this turn is a little bit interesting, I'd say. We see the Crucible Champion being a card that's probably going to come down just to maintain the board for as long as possible. You just want to maintain the board, make sure they don't die, and just want to, with one massive swing turn, and just take over the game from there. And right now they're doing pretty well, I'd say, on that, in terms of doing that.
I love that. Make sure you don't die. A very good lesson for many Hearthstone players. What can the Greek team Intrepid Fox do here? Should they play Scavenging Hyena on this awkward board, or just go, Diamol with the Dire Frenzy? Actually pretty good because it doesn't die to the board, so you probably still have a 4-1 minion. Unless, of course, your opponent decides to put resources into it. But if he does, or if they do in this case, then yeah, they don't develop anything else.
We just talk about how good of a top deck this Celiax is going to be. Once they pop this act, they will just get a free 10 taunt with Divine Shield and Lifesteal down on the board. With Rush as well, just being able to clear off this entire Diamol as well alongside it. It's just pretty much all they want here. So the one downside that they might see is that the cube will be a little bit weaker of a play, potentially, because obviously we'll lose the Celiax effect of it. But just being able to clear this board off is super nice for them. And just a free 7 rather than a free 10, obviously. My map's just completely off.
And if I'm honest, this seems like the beginning of the end for Intrepid Fox, at least in this game. How are you going to come back? I think Deathstalker Rexar is what you need, and that's exactly what they're going for, because you're going to look for that that silence. We saw it last game. Silence wrecked the plan of Gamers Origin, and maybe Hawkeye or Intrepid Fox can find it again here.
You see right now, yeah, just kind of can never just cube it up here. Just have that 12 power in play, and obviously there's actually consideration to not hero power here because there might be some weird world where an Unleash the Hound's turn can just go ahead and do a lot of damage to this board. So giving them that extra 1 token may or may not be what they want to do here. So interesting decision right now. Also, they may also be considering the Wild Pyro just to have that stronger body in play now that you have seen the Rex that free 2 body will not be cleared off as easily. So a few decisions here to make for this French side as they are trying to transition this deck. It's like Mendes, as pointed out, just passing here, which is, seems perfectly viable.
Yup, I like not going for the dude because the dude will not add anything to the value of your board, or at least not enough to get to run the risk of it being exploited. And as I said before, they need to discover a beast that deals with these minions. It's going to be very tricky, something like the Hydra with Poisonous Rush, but you're not on 10 mana yet, so you're probably not even able to deal with the board this turn. At least you're still on 32 HP, but does not look very good for Intrepid Fox at the moment.
Usually right now, this pick from this Rexars is not what they're looking for. They just have to figure out one way to do something here. And again, that's the thing with Rexar, right? There are sometimes you just need very specific outs, you just not find them. So I just go for this 4-9 taunt, which will slow down the onslaught of James Origin just a tad bit for now. And this is just super solid. So this is actually a pretty acceptable beast because you know it's gonna die next turn. So you know that it's not the fact that the passive ability of the Emerald Reaver will not slow you down. Like the card you hand will go back.
Do you play the egg or do you go for Consecration?
You play egg because it sets up a stronger board, and you have the Uther coming down next turn as well. So you just want to make sure that on your turn 9 you have enough stuff in play that you can answer pretty much anything with the Zufra. So I think it's just much better because you want to have the board. That's what I feel like, at least.
Definitely agree.
So something I find fairly entertaining is the fact that the Shilala still costs 25 and it's about to be turn 9.
Who needs spells if you get good minions? But
See,
I must say the hand for Intrepid Fox looks kind of scary here. The Scavenging Hyena together with the Unleash and 2 Timberwolves, the Spring Paw as well. It doesn't cost too much mana to play all of these cards, and they can deal a ton of damage. So yeah, we said if the Paladin goes white, then you've probably already lost, and I still stand by that. However, they might Intrepid Fox is not that yet. They're not there yet.
I want to see how desperate they actually are here, because if they just go for the if they just like went for the jeweled macaw and just tried to get the and just tried to see if they could get the like the owl, that would be like the absolute sickest play here. You see right now they're just trying to see if they can just make the biggest possible hyena and just hope it doesn't die to anything. But we can see that both the Uther as well as this Wild Pyromancer's Shrink Ray will just answer this. But this Wild Pyro's Shrink Ray play is looking absolutely ridiculous right here. That just looks
amazing.
like 3 8/8s coming down, just killing off your opponent's board.
So you had Mountain Giants? Just look at my 8/8s. They're way cooler and max. Yeah, that must be the only play.
Which path to choose?
So we went from Mountain Giant to Mech Giant.
Didn't we have a Mech Giant?
We did.
Clockwork?
It was really bad though, because it got countered by your opponent playing cards, and that's not good.
What would
I think it was pretty bad. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it seems pretty bad. But actually, there's a few more levels to this, right? Because they had to figure out whether or not they actually want the because they can go without triggering this Wild Pyro, and they can just do just natural trade-offs in these, and they can just do this, hold on to the Pyro, so it seems much better. And I actually really like this because it becomes the same thing, right? And it lets you keep your board as well. And this is a much slower play in a sense, but it also is just very, very, very strong. And that is 27 damage or something like that, starting on board now.
It's such an elegant play. It's not. I like the burn everything with fire because it only got 1 HP, but this is way cooler. And I still got the max and the Pyromancer. This is also way better, not just cooler.
No,
and there we go. Yeah, Intrepid Fox looking for an answer once again in their beast repository, but not really finding anything. The Gurubashi chicken is not going to save you. The Silverback Patriarch is also definitely not going to save you.
I mean, the Silverback Patriarch once won a game at the World Championships. Can you at least let him have that without tearing him apart?
He's my favorite victim.
Okay, I guess we could find a poison here that would help clear the board just a little bit. Finds +3 attack, which in a lot of circumstances, just not this one, would be very, very good find, but it's just not that big of it's not that strong of a play here. I mean, what are we doing else? We have no taunts, really, right? Killer Command, trade off 1 giant, gives a little bit more time. Obviously, they're hoping to find something like Poisonous Bloodbath that they could just trigger out on the following turn, but they did not find it. And that does mean that they will be staring down a lot of damage, because I'm assuming it's going to be a Uther play. Ooh, that Kango still could also be really huge. But the problem with the Kango is right, is the fact there's not a lot of actual Robosaurs that have died in this game, so bringing back a bunch of Axe, while it's cool, it's not that good right here. They just want to go for the maximum amount of Smork here, and there's the thing about this deck, right? Because sure, Uther, it's nice you heal for 15 over the course of X amount of times with this weapon, but it's just 15 damage going to your opponent's face a lot of the time as well, and we can see that's probably what they're trying to do right here as well. This Wild Pyromancer is going to go face as well. They're just going to say, clear my entire board, and I'll just kill it next time. So
Hydra Lifesteal Rush is a thing, but oh, okay. So the Tuna Rhino together with the zombies, or the other zombies, because they're both poisonous, at least clears something. But you're still dead, so you need to find something more. Can you? Yeah, the Bloat Bat with Charge or Rush, poisonous. That's good enough.
You don't have the mana for it, because the Poisonous Bloat Bat Rush combination costs. I think it's 9. It costs. Yeah, it costs 9. It costs 9 because you have to use the Wildbird Skitter as well as the Poisonous Bloat Bat and the Bloat Bat. The Bloat Bat costs 7. Well, it costs 4. What am I saying? But the combo of those costs 9 because 4 plus 5 is 9. Quick math.
This is not enough, right? I'm just
Is this a
calculating,
yeah?
but no, this is not enough. So they should have gone for they should well, their out, in my opinion, was to go for the Hydra Rush Spider poisonous.
Would that be? That
That's
would
8
cost
mana.
8. That would cost 8 mana. Yeah, but they were doing a different play. So we have a little bit of a break going into this the fourth game here. Obviously, not- so so right now, like the rest of the comments. So what do you think is going to be the next queue from Gamers Origin? Obviously, because now they finally got this Paladin out of the way, and what do you think? Like, are they going to go with the are they going to go with the Hunter the Rogue here?
It's so difficult to guess what they're going to do. Personally, I'd probably go with the Hunter because I think it's the most favored against the other decks. But you already played the Rogue, and if you get that win, then you feel really good. It's so different, so difficult to predict this. On the other hand, we know for sure that we will see the Hunter for Intrepid Fox once again because it's the only deck they still have to win with. Just for the people tuning in, it's 2-4-1 in favor of Intrepid Fox at the moment. Gamers Origin on their last legs, at least in this series. Yeah, what would you do? So I think Beast Hunter or
Yeah,
Midrange
so,
Hunter.
so also something we can talk about now, right? Because we have the time, and I couldn't really recall how much I got to talk about it on the analyst test before this game, but the Hunter build from Gamers Origin is a lot
Yes,
different. So they have
this is
just
awesome.
taken a lot of creative freedom in the creation of their deck here. Like they have a Hunter's Hatchet, and they have Revenge of the Wild, and they have a Mukla as well. But
This deck
Mukla is
feels
not.
like there's a mad genius in Gamers Origin that
I mean
just makes
that Mad
decks.
Genius that Mad Genius is done, but
I
that's just
know.
that he's kind of the guy that he's just inventing, sitting in his cave all day, just making those sweet brews. And that Hunter's Hatchet obviously is a card that we saw being printed in the most recent set. Obviously, it's a 2 mana weapon with 2 attack that agrees if you control the beast, gain +1 durability. So it could potentially be a 2 free weapon, which is pretty solid. And Revenge of the Wild, that card can do things with Unleash the Hounds, and that's pretty much one of the few reasons why it's in there, just with the links and stuff like that, because the things that card can do is just unbelievable. So if you somehow manage to not kill a hyena, and you have too much of a white board and you have less than 25 HP, you could very well die, and that's just very interesting to mirror because the board states can go fairly wide, but I'm not really sure how this tech um, lines up compared to just having the double candleship just to help take apart that early board, which the Intrepid Fox do have. So I'm not completely sure about that. And as well, so obviously the matchup between the Odd Rogue and the mid-range Hunter is a matchup that I, generally speaking, tended to prefer from the Rogue side before nerfs. I'm not really sure how much that was impacted by the changes to Cobalt though, because Cobalt is a little bit of it obviously was a very useful tool in terms of closing out, taking good trades.
Okay, so just heard an update from another match because there are a lot of matches going on at the same time. 6 to be exact. All 12 teams are playing at the moment, and Swagoi versus New Dynasty is 2 against 2. So they are really going to the end. And to come back to your point just now, I was talking to some players before, and they were like, Headhunter's Hatchet is always worse than Candle Shot because the immunity is too good. So they would never play this Headhunter's Hatchet instead of Candleshot, and I kind of agree with them. But in the mirror, there's a lot of beasts like that have 2 HP, and you can clear them in 1 turn. So in the mirror, it's good. Against something like Zoo, it's good. But in all other matchups, I think I'd rather have the Candleshot.
Yeah, that's a weird one, right? Because obviously this is a bit of a conundrum that has troubled a few minds, a few different Hunter deck builds now. That Hunter's Mark is now 2 mana, which does have some implications in decks like Spell Hunter, which got a lot more. That deck got a lot heavier hit by the nerf to Spellstone, right? But A deck like Deathrattle Hunter, which I've been on quite a few people's minds recently, just as a deck that potentially could make a comeback, because the meta looked like it was slowing down. Then people started playing Arch Secret Mage, and that just kind of went a lot faster, right? But the fact that it's now 2 mana means that like you actually pretty much pay double up in a sense that you can play like 150% more to kill off minions in a combination with the Candleshot Hunter's Mark things, right? And you also can't go on, let's say, unlike turn 3, you could go for Hunter's Mark and like a Spring Pour or Lings, whatever you had left over. Those things are, combos that aren't gone now, but they have been phased out of the aggressive decks because they're just not worth it anymore, because the mana discount or the mana increase is just too much of a hike to really maintain.
Yeah, in these kind of decks, it definitely is. And I want to come back to your other point as well about the odd rogue, if it's still good against the hunter, and I think yes, it's still very good, because the power of the odd rogue is that weapon, that 2-attack weapon we were just talking about as well in the hunter, but rogue always has a 2-attack weapon, and it's always good to clear with these beasts that the hunter plays, and that's why the rogue is favored. You can get that early tempo on, you can get that weapon, you can deal with kind of everything the hunter plays. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely still favored.
Another score update that we've just gotten in is the fact that right now Us Alliance is leading 2-1 against M&M Gaming, and we are going into game number 4 here. So let's see how Ramblings. You see the Gamers Origin have decided to queue up their hunter, so we're in for a Hunter Mirror, and this hand right now for Gamers Origin is fire. Hyena, Spring Pour, and that Dire Frenzy is good, but it's probably not what you want. But the hand itself looks really decent right now.
On the other hand, the hand for Intrepid Fox looks not as great, because you have no early game, you have only reactionary cards, and that's definitely not what you're looking for. So I suspect that everything, maybe one Unleash the Hunt stays, nope, everything goes into the mulligan, back into the deck, and let's see what Intrepid Fox gets back from this. On the other hand, Gamers Origin still looking what they will keep, but I think they agree with you. The first 2 cards are definitely too good to throw away.
They
And it's the
definitely
Hunter
are.
Mirror.
But the problem is the fact that, obviously, as we're mentioning, the double candle shot, right? So they full mulligan away everything. Okay, they're looking for that diamond. They're looking for more cards that will stick around, and no plans on one. They find a diamond at the top of the deck, though, so you can say they got rewarded. This card is what they want. They want this one at the top of the deck. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we'll see the candle shot here just setting up for later. I don't think they're going to use it, because you have to spend your entire 3 turns candle shot on the Dire Maul, and that's not great. You could coin the Razor Maul to get the tempo play, and it's not even that bad, because you know that your opponent doesn't play a candle shot. So it's iffy, but I wouldn't say that it would be a bad play for sure.
Yeah, this is a little bit interesting, right? Because right now you could also just like go coin raise someone just trying to contest this, but that would get heavily punished by that Headhunter's Axe, and or just potentially they raise some more off their own. But if neither of those cards are found, or so that you are not really that good. Timber will found that does mean that we'll get this up.
Wow, and I just heard that Northern suffered their second loss against Helsinki Reds 3-2, so that also went to the wire. Yeah, 3-2. That's great for Helsinki Reds. I think they're 2-1 or 3-0 now.
So
2-1.
heading back into the game here, the tracking is pretty interesting here because it allows a candle shot. It doesn't really do a whole lot for you in terms of tempo, but you have the flanking strike with Dire Frenzy just to decide. I think you have to go with the Dire Frenzy with the flanking strike. That's what I meant to say, because it's super important to help you clear off potential cards that would come down here. We can see this Animal Companion here is going to be massive. They do in fact also get the Huffer here, and this will probably most likely prompt that kill command in the hand from this Intrepid Fox lineup. They could go for the Animal Companion themselves, but right now we've seen the hand, there's that Dire Frenzy, and you do not want to let that stick around, and there's actually a high likelihood here that they could find something that's basically just unplayable. They have to probably play down this Crackling Razor more, just hope that it sticks, because they're pretty much out of anything else, and this just plays right into the hand of Intrepid Fox with this flanking strike just looking primed and ready to go here.
Both get the Tundra Rhino in hand, but Gamers Origin will probably be the first one to play. They've already seen a kill command, so it will be hard for Intrepid Fox to deal with it. Assuming us, of course, that we do see that flanking strike, but I wouldn't see a reason why not. Because if you play anything else, like if you get Huffer, you lose against a 3-2. It's not great. Your Master's Call doesn't win you the game at this point because you get even more behind in tempo. The only tempo play I see is the flanking strike, and that's what this game or this matchup is all about, the tempo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're obviously right. Again, Camel Shot can be really good for tempo if you have to if you get that snipe on the Timber Wolf with it. We can see right now this is going to be pretty interesting, right? Because this flanking strike is just going to go back across the field, it would seem, and Thunder Rhino is not an option here, I should say. So just you gotta use the flank strike. It's not mana efficient. It doesn't do anything for you really, but it's just your best option right here because you haven't found those Master's Calls. You haven't found anything else. Just cycle through your deck, so you're just struggling right now. But that Deathstalker Rex top deck could be interesting.
Do you play the Tundra Rhino here?
I think it's too much of a. I feel like you just give that out for free in case they have Rexar. That's just my idea. But obviously, I have cast divisions. I know that they have the Rexar, and it can also
and
just be
the counter Tundra Rhino.
the counter. But I feel like counter Rhino they don't mind too much because they do have the kill command in hand, so they can just answer the Rhino itself. So they know that the Rhino will not stick around. I guess that's also one of the reasons why they decided to just play it like they did because. I mean, they could have gone for a more sports-centric line or like a more draw-heavy line, but decided to just do it like this. And this Rexar on Sex is generally speaking pretty good. Obviously, this matchup isn't about Rexar like a lot of other matchups are for the Hunter, but it's just a nice tool to have. And getting rid of that Rhino could be massive as well because it's just such a big pressure minion.
It does give some time to Intrepid Fox. They can use the Master's Call and play Animal Companion, and all of a sudden their hand looks rather good. But on the other hand, Gamers Origin can spawn a custom beast every turn, which is also very strong.
Interesting play right here. Sorry for
This is
interrupting you,
awkward.
but this
No, go
Unleash the Hounds plus Dire Fence, it could actually be pretty interesting because 1 mana 4/4 charge, it's not what you necessarily would want always, but it's actually a pretty solid card to have in your deck. And it's kind of the easiest way to just clear the board up for you as well. So it's definitely a thing to consider right here.
Yeah, it's great. Like it feels like a waste to play the Unleash here, but it's so good. Like if you could play a 1-mana 1/1 charge or 1-mana 4/4 charge, would you? You definitely would. It's like a better Huffer. And yes, it costs you your entire turn, but is that bad? No, because you still have a great board. And a better deck. I definitely play it here. You're not even afraid of spending resources, because you have Build a Beast.
Ooh, you could make a bigger hyena though. You could just go like bigger, faster, better, stronger with this, but it's interesting, right? Because that giant wasp though, this could actually be really interesting. Just if they took that hyena, they took the beetle instead though, which I guess actually makes a lot more sense because it's a much better means to fight for the bot. But obviously, had they known they would have gotten a stealth option, that hyena becomes much more interesting all of a sudden. But this is still a pretty solid minions play, and obviously with no deadly shot in the deck, they know this is just going to stick around and do some damage here.
Maybe they want to keep their Dire Frenzy for a large, awesome beast that they built from Build a Beast. Because they can get a lot of value from that.
That is definitely a thing to consider, and I also think that the major downfall with the play that I was suggesting is the fact that they want to hold on to this Unleash the Hounds potentially for Revenge of the Wild play. Obviously, if you missed the segment that we were talking about it, there is in fact a copy of Revenge of the Wild in this deck, and that could be a massive finisher at some point. And let's say that your opponent goes very wide on board because they might be baited in, so because they've seen the Rexarts and stuff like this, you just kill your opponent with that and just do really interesting things instead. And maybe they want to Dire Frenzy the Rhino as well because they feel like they might be in a position where they can be greedy enough to do that. So it's just a lot of things to consider here. We can see right this turn as well also is very, very, very interesting. We see this might be a turn they decide to go in or no, they decide to go Dire Frenzy on the Springpore. And why is that Why do they think they want to go for the diaphragm on the spring ball? Like, what makes them do that?
Well, it's not bad. Like, it's in general, it's a very good play. I'm not entirely sure about this situation, but I think they're like, none of the plays we can do is actually great. So let's see what a good play could be. And this is a good play regardless of the situation, because getting 3 spring balls back in your deck, like getting a 1 mana 5/4 rush minion or 4/4 rush minion is pretty good. It spawns extra dudes that buff your scavenging hyena. That's pretty good. So overall, it's a good play, just not that great in this situation. So I think that's why they did it.
It also it's interesting because the way it extends the resource, because you get a 5/4 a 4/4 rush dude, which is pretty good. Like, it's just good, and also it generates the extra 1/1 token in the back. It's just like one of the few ways you can extend your resource in this matchup. And normally, like the way the game is already decided to go by this is by doing the thing we're seeing on screen right now with the sorry, but I mean it's weird, but like with the Rex side, because they found that we see this that's going to be completely mirrored here by the Gamers Origin side, and I just to see if they throw in this link just to make this hyena even bigger, but it seems that they're not going to. They're just going to hold back the links for future turns. And so it's still a pretty strong board, and again, this could just come down to this companion role or whatever they want to do, but they can clear this up very nice if they roll on to with Unleash the Hounds plus double Timberwolf. But...
And Scavenging Hyena.
And the hyena. Oh, that's a hyena as well. Yeah, I had the cards upside down for Intrepid Fox. I somehow managed to miss it. This could be an absolutely huge swing turn for this Greek side. Actually, that would be huge as well. So there's a lot of things to consider again here. And something to note about. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, do you need to play the Unleash? But I guess so.
If you want to make your hyena big, you definitely need to do it.
That's definitely true.
And you know that your opponents are low on resources in hand, so you know it's less likely for them to go wider, because they're less likely to find the cards that they need to, because the only card in their deck that would allow them to go very wide would potentially be a Master's Call into whatever thing they could find, and that Master's Call would have been a goner by now, because you would know we had seen it. An interesting decision here that decides to just make this a medium size thing, and they could have made it even bigger. They decided to add 3 damage from the Unleash the Hounds, even bigger. So obviously an 8/4, which is still a really scary minion. Something to note is the fact that you can go for bigger hyena paws in this matchup way more often now because of the nerf to Hunter's Mark means that there's being omitted, and that's actually a consequence we didn't really talk about when we were discussing the Hunter's Mark nerf. And I think that's something that's very important to note is the fact that these swing turns, generally speaking, they tend to stay around.
Well, they're more likely to stick around. And what would you do in this situation? I think I'd build a beast, to be honest. Yes, you can get that Tundra Rhino for free on the board, because with this you can clear almost everything that's on the board. But is build a beast not just better? Not entirely.
I think that just having the option of this potentially being a thing on the board is just so good for you, because obviously, unless a second copy of Flanking Strike, like a companion or a killer command comes down, this Rhino would stick around, and that would be huge because it would obviously just make the biggest and dumbest beast possible and just hit your opponent in the head. So staking out Tunnel Rhino in this matchup is super, super important. I feel like because just being able to just do stupid things with your hero power once you have the Rex power down is just one of the most important things. And we see this killer command just being used to just take back the board, and again, as I was just talking about, the Rhino just being a massive threat here. So.
And that's the second kill command from Intrepid Fox, so they do not have a lot of kill pressure left. And that's a good pickup. The tracking, you can look for whatever you...
This turn is interesting as well. This is an interesting one, because this turn is actually, sequencing is actually a very, very important thing. It's very hard to figure out, right? Because what is correct sequencing? Is it looking for the beast first? Because you might make an 8-mana beast you want to play, but if you make a beast that costs less than 8, would have been correct to go for that tracking first to find something from your deck that would have fit your curve better. Then that's something you have to consider, and especially if you have 3 different players kind of just tuning in with 3 different voices and 3 different opinions. That could be very interesting. You see right here, they find their 8-mana beast, and this beast is fairly scary, I'd say. But that Razor Maw could just pick up poisons on this Hound.
Poisonous.
That would be one hell of a swing. And obviously, as you heard earlier, Arthur Lions were leading 2-1 against
M&M Gaming.
Gaming. Obviously, I just slipped my mind, but they came out on top, and that means also line to take the series 3-1. So just a little bit of a quick score update for you out there in case you were looking to figure out how us lines were doing, and obviously we'll be keeping you up to date with the results coming throughout the rest of this series.
Okay, so +3 attack would also do the trick of dealing with this large minion. However, it would cost you both your Life Drinker and your Hound, which is not something you want. So I think he really wants Poisonous, and he's thinking of leaving it. Or they're thinking of leaving it up, I think. But they're out of resources, and this is a large problem for Intrepid Fox, because Gamers Origin is never going to run out of resources.
All right,
because they have the build.
33%. They find the Poisonous, it's absolutely huge. This board state is going to be really hard for Kevin to pull back. They do have 30 HP to work with before they take the damage, so they have like 25 to work with, which is still a pretty solid life total. Flying Strike, super good card. Yeah, Flying Strike plus Rhino is one of the strongest combinations in the deck. And just another squad that we were talking about earlier as well. We heard about the match between Swagger Gaming and New Dynasty, and Swagger Gaming did come out on top in that one, 3-2. Livia, and I guess you wouldn't be too excited about that result.
It's a shame, but at least it was 3-2. It was close, and I hope they had good games.
So for those of you who are uninitiated in the fact that Livian is actually affiliated with New Dynasty, just throwing that out there. Which is why I was kind of poking fun at him. See, this
Totally
they
not biased.
find Vicious, Scale Height, and Mastiff. So these two are very different ways to take this up. I do go for the Echo Rush here. This is just going to be a very nice, clean way to get on the board. Just get rid of this 4-4 Misha. Get rid of the Life Finger or the Race Them All. Decide to just get rid of the Life Finger. I can't remember the 2 copies of Dire Frenzy. I just one. There are 2 copies. There are 2 copies, so that's actually a little bit to consider that as well.
But not only that, they go for the Beetle as well, and that's because the longer this game goes, the better it is for Gamers Origin, because they're already a lot ahead in fatigue. As long as there is no Deathstalker Rexar for Intrepid Fox, Gamers Origin is practically winning.
Yeah, so you can see right now, it's the thing I was pointing out before about the whole sequencing thing. They were really quick to hover the tracking because they had a really good 9-mana turn, in fact, with the Thunder Rhino plus Dire Frenzy play. But again, you see now just having second thoughts. Is this the play we want to go for? What could change? What top decks could we make? Would, let's say, a Headhunter's Hatchet change that? Because we could have gone for Flanking Strike Hatchet, stuff like that. They do find the Mukla and the Spring upgrade, the Spring Pro as well. Does this change what they're going to do for this turn now?
Yes, it does.
But does it though? Because they could go for the full clear, but how important is the full clear here for them? I mean, this is just a better full clear, right? I actually like this a lot because they're just playing around the top deck next to Rexar, just making sure that this turnaround stays around.
Okay, that's good.
That's a 2-5 rather than a 2-2.
This is a Dire Maul. That's not great. At least it's
Masterful.
it is a non-Dire Frenzy Dire Maul, and that means that Intrepid Fox just concedes. They also know that this is not going to go anywhere as long as they don't have Deathstalker Rexar, and they just lost too much tempo, which means that this series also goes to 2 against 2, and we might have a reverse sweep on our hands.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about that we actually really do fancy the Odd Rogue in this matchup before the nerfs, and we kind of agree to the fact that we didn't feel like Koba was that big of a proponent in this matchup. So I'm just to see right now how this is going to pan out. And I feel like Intrepid Fox will not be too happy with themselves, right? Because they take the deck that is potentially the strongest deck in the entire game, and they just lost 2 games in a row with it, and then a whole lot of things they could have done. Obviously, they just got out pressured by the Rexar, but they didn't find their own one. So yeah, just quick, no break this time. Just going right into the action as we like it, and this opening hand for the hunt, these hands, man. Talk me through them because they seem a little bit complicated.
They are complicated. So for the Rogue is happy. Rogue sees a 1-drop, Rogue is happy. It's very easy actually playing Odd Rogue. You play a 1-drop, then you weapon up, then you play a 3-drop, then you weapon up, and you continue that along the way. For the Hunter, however, they have a Spring Pull, which means they could get tempo back. They also had the Dire Frenzy, but they chose to throw it away because by the time they could play it, it would be turn 5 or turn 6, and you're usually not going to keep something you only play that late, especially in a tempo-based deck. So as the rogue, I would be very happy right now. As the hunter, let's see. Pretty happy.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting thing because they do find the henchman flag as well, which is just a massive minion because what is very important to note about the henchman flag is that it very often gets out of range after flanking strike, which is one of the main tools for the hunter to get back on board and just like
I'm
get
getting more happy for the hunter every card they draw.
I'm glad to hear that you enjoy the hunter hand.
I always enjoy hunters.
Yeah, and obviously Diamol disposition is it's still strong, but there are things to consider here because the potential to go for Firefly, Coin, Flame Elemental, obviously that play would be punished really hard from what we can see in the hand of the hunter. He's just gotta go for the Diamol 1-3 body on turn 1. Doesn't really get much better than this in terms of just a cut up on turn 1 for aggro, so I think that is something. I think this attempt is good enough. Right now, they can clear this diamond, but how important is it to clear this diamond in reality? Because you're going to leave yourself with a 1-1 that's just going to get taken apart by this hero power on the follow up, and you can potentially just go for a tempo swing by making a bigger scavenging angle later down the road. So,
I think you go for. You're not looking specifically for something specifically, maybe for the flanking strike, because that's a really good tempo gaining card, but it's more like you don't really have anything else to do. And yes, you could play the Scavenging Hyena and trade, but it still dies to the weapon.
Yeah, so they just decide that they don't like that, and it's also just like I assume they're going to be SI7 agents in the Zodra, right? It's also just super bad into Coin SI7 agent, but I guess that it deals 4 damage to your opponent and you're just trying to kill them as fast as possible. So now, are you going to go on board, try to fight a board, or are you going to go for the Master's Call? Like, what? I don't really see what the end game for this play kind of was, though. That's the thing that I'm struggling with a little bit.
Yeah, it's fun because I think you're right. They're like 4 damage is 4 damage. They have to go to 0. They have no healing in the deck, so let's do all the damage we can. And then they draw Master's Call, which is more like a let's play a longer game card. It's switching plans, but being adaptable to your draws is very important in Hearthstone as well. You can't tunnel vision on one line of play. So they adapted, and now they have a decent hand, I must say.
But yeah, it felt decent hand, I'd say, definitely. A lot of options, right? They did find that race them all. They have the Unleash the Hounds potentially punish a wider push. See right here, the game setting guys, maybe they're just talking through a few turns. Down the road, they decided to just go for this card Firefly, just try to get as many things on board as possible. And obviously, they can't go for Coin Fungalmancer or Coin Virus or anything like that anymore, but they know that they just want to make sure they have a board getting to turn 5, and this is the best way for them to shore up themselves of what's same, at least according to themselves. And what this also opens up is the fact that it opens up the possibility for them to go 1-drop plus Deadly Poison next turn for just filling out their mana perfectly, which means they can fight for the board instead of this Fungalmancer. That's what I assume, at least.
The problem for the hunter is that at best they can equal the board state, which means they're still behind. Unless they get, there's 2 outs here, Poisonous, which they get, or +3 attack. Both would deal with the Henchman Thug. Poisonous it is, so now they are actually ahead on board state.
They have been really good, and I don't mean this in any negative way. They've just been really good. Like they've been 100% 2 for 2 for their Poisonous in situations where they needed them. Obviously, he had +3 attack would have been just good enough as well. So that's just something to note. I assume it's just that it's obviously it's something you play for. They got rewarded for playing for it, so it's still a good play. But I mean, this is still a little bit interesting, right? Because right now, this crystallized into flame elemental play will just try to set up a board state that will just set up this Fungalmancer. But there is Timberwolf and Unleash the Hounds in the hand of the Intrepid Fox. So this
do you go for that, or are you greedy and play your Tundra Rhino? I think you go for the Unleash and
There's
Timber.
no way you play Rhino here ever. Like You're just giving it up to the board. I mean, sure, you
Oh, yeah,
can
you're right,
make your
you're right.
opponent miss your entire turn, but it's just not worth it, to be honest. It's just never worth it here.
I think you take the kill command from this tracking because it's in line with the play of just kill your opponent, and the Dire Maul or the Candle Shot are not going to do it. And we
also,
just heard that, Ants lost their third match as well. Feels bad, but feels good for Epic Esports because they won. And it was 3-2, I believe. And that's pretty good. Like, both played well. We've heard that scoreline before today. And GG's to both teams.
yeah, this situation is actually kind of a weird one now for the Zod Rogue. Because, I mean, you want to stick down the flashing any sort of pressure, but the Hunter has just been able to turn back the board super, super well here, just having those massive swing turns that they have needed in situations where they've been super, super important. And if you just think back a few turns, right, if they hadn't hit the poisonous to get rid of that Henchland Fox, this game would have been a lot more different, right? So see here, just trying to stir up the board yet again, just get rid of the Diamond, get rid of the Timber Wolf, and just hope that this fleshing itself will stick around and potentially carry them to a victory, because they are starting to run out of resources in their hand.
Yup, and this is a great pickup by the Greek team. The flanking strike will deal with the vicious fledgling here, spawning a 3-3 wolf for themselves. Yeah, you can put a hero power in there as well, but this hand seems so good and so aggressive for Intrepid Fox. Well, for Gamers Origin, it doesn't look that great. Yes, you can play Dagger, Poison, and SI maybe, or Dagger, Poison, Void Tripper.
You have a few options here. I'm not really like, none of them obviously feel great. That's just the factual part of it right now. You lost your early game board control fight against this Hunter, and they have a lot of tools to just fight for that longer game, and I feel like you want to hold on to this. This is actually a weird one, because it's a decision that depends on what they feel like is the higher value minion. Do they feel like the flipping effect from Void Reaper is higher value? Do they feel like the 2 damage from SI7 Agent will come in more handy? And this could actually be super, super important. There's also a thing to note that SI7 Agent is in fact a combo minion, while you just play the Void Reaper to activate itself. I'm not sure if that paid anything in this decision, but I think it's just a thing to note here. And there are just so many ways for Intrepid Fox to just take apart this thing here and just decide to just do whatever they want here, more or less.
Yeah, there are many ways to deal with this, but none of them really good, I must say, because you can't use a Tundra Rhino, because it will die, and it won't even kill the 3-3. So what you must do is use Kill Command, or hope for something like Huffer, which dies, or Misha, which dies to the weapon. And yes, then your opponent is on 13 HP, so it might not even be that bad, but you don't really want to spend your kill command here on that 3-3, because you wanted to kill your opponent. It's a kill command. So this doesn't look that easy for Intrepid Fox here.
No, it is complicated, for sure. Like, everything is complicated these days, right?
Wow, so deep.
It is so deep. I'm calling 2003
They do go for the
Evil Arena, I guess, just because it just play the tune. I like this. It's like they top the second Thunder right now, right? So they know that they have damage to come through, and this Argent Squire, I think I got played. My client bugged out a little bit, but with this Fungal Mancer play finally getting some value, they will be able to just tear apart this Thunder Rhino. But there are a lot of damage in his hand. But
yeah, this is Unleashed.
But
well,
so
that
doesn't do a whole lot right
it's
now.
also difficult.
It doesn't. Also, the main problem with this, right, is the fact that they are not a 9 mana, so it doesn't do anything for them right here. To be completely honest, right? Like, had it been a 9 mana, great, unleash the hounds, take apart this board, play Rex, or reset everything up. But it's not going to be the case here, and they do find a Huffer, which will take care of the 5/3, which is obviously super important. But it also opens up.
Go face, kill command, hero power. You put your opponent on 2 HP. No way you die next turn. You just go face. I'm not sure if there's no way you die next turn. I just said that, but
I mean, Coblats are gone, so I think it's a pretty safe statement to say.
Yeah, let's see, you're on 21. There's 10 damage on board, so that's 12 plus Leroy is 18. I don't think there's a way to die next.
And it just decides dump down the Thunder Rhino instead of the hero powers. So this is interesting. The King Nuclear doesn't do anything here, and I mean this Viper does help shore off the board, but the damage is just there from the hand. Unleash the Hounds, kill command, and that hero power will mean that Intrepid Fox will take the series 3-2. So
After all,
obviously gamers are just not notice that they're just trying to figure out what is the way that we win. What cards can they have that mean that we will not die next turn, so we potentially set up the counter push? Do we use this White Rippers to get rid of stuff? Like, how do we do this? Right, that's just the name of the game right here.
and you know what the problem is? Being Gamers Origin right now, you're very aware of what's going on. You're like, yeah, we're dead. There's no way they're going to make this play if we're not definitely dead after this turn. They know what's coming. They're just putting up their best performance, giving it up. There are so many minions, but there's so much damage in the hand for Intrepid Fox. And there we go, 3-2 for the Greek team against Gamers Origin. And that's the final scoreline for this match.
That is definitely it. And that does mean that after all this, the Intrepid Fox lineup will in fact be 3-0 overall. And I'm not sure about if that's the end of the series. I feel like Royal Blue versus Sector 1 is still going on, but obviously we just do a quick rundown of the match. We know the results of it already. So we did give it use running throughout the set, but if in case you didn't hear them, M&M Gaming lost 1-3 to Oslo Lions. Helsinki Reds beat Northern 3-2. Swagger Gaming beat New Dynasty 3-2, and Epic Esports beat ENS 3-2. And Intrepid Fox beat Gamers Origin 3-2. So a lot of 3-2s going on right now. And at the top of the standings, that does mean that Helsinki Reds will be joined by Intrepid Fox at that 3-0 mark. And just two teams that have been at the top of the they've just been playing so well and recently just been having good results. And I think I'm just going to be very, very satisfied with this. Just overall, and just great to see so many teams just doing well. And obviously at the bottom of the table, New Dynasty and ENS at that 0-3 spot.
There always have to be teams that lose.
Yeah, and something to notice that obviously it's top 6 goes to playoffs. Just the first and second place gets seeded one round further into the playoffs. So obviously there's still a fighting chance. And obviously there's a lot of things to talk about with this series. Obviously all 5 games. So without taking too much of time, I'm just going to throw it right over to the analyst desk. Delta, Cinder, and Wigagood, take it away.
Thank you for that beautiful casting, and over to us in the analyst desk. We have been watching this matchup and going into details of a little bit more plays. Any standout plays you two found? Or?
Yeah, I think that really what this whole match came down to was how much weaker Odd Rogue is without Cold Blood. And that was the one thing that we were watching in both those games and both those losses from Gamers Origin. Like, just how many things Cold Blood does for that deck that it just can't do anymore. Like, the 1-drops are not threatening anymore because you don't have to worry about a 1-3 turning into a 5-3. You don't have to worry about a lot of damage coming out. Like we were looking at in the first Rogue match versus the Cloning Gallery Priest, how much safer the Cloning Gallery Priest felt because they weren't having to worry about one of the minions that was kind of unassuming having to get cleared because it could get +4 attack. And just like all the different things that Cold Blood does in every stage of the game that it couldn't do. And you saw that especially in the Hunter matchup where they couldn't clear off enough of Intrepid Fox's minions and just could not get that kind of board control to be able to pressure the mid-range hunter. And the mid-range hunter just kept putting out minion wave after minion wave, and eventually it was just too much for Gamers Origin to be able to handle.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, when it came to the slower matchups, like with the Clone Priest, the Death Rattle Paladin, like those games, there were a lot of there was a lot of great recognition from both teams, good sequencing, like good decision making, and those games were decided in large part by some of that great play. When it came down to game 4, game 5, you had the mid hunter mirror and then Odd Rogue versus mid hunter, and in both cases, the team that went first ended up winning the game, and that was Gamers Origin. Gamers Origin won the first one going first, and then on the second game, in game 5, Intrepid Fox, ended up making it a race with that hunter, and because the rogue just you cannot take too much face damage clearing the board with the dagger, or that kill command just ends up winning the race for you.
Yeah, and that goes back to Cold Blood too. Like Cold Blood kept you from having to use the dagger to remove minions sometimes.
Yeah.
And now you're missing that extra couple of damage. Now you have to throw a dagger into a minion. Well, that's 3 more face damage you're taking, 2 more face damage you're taking. And eventually that adds up. And when the hunter has a hero power that also does 2 damage to your face and can go and has a bunch of charge minions, that just doesn't leave you a lot of room for error if you don't hit your curve.
Yeah, and Intrepid Fox, they banned the secret odd mage, and interestingly, the secret odd mage is the aggressive deck from their lineup that relies on damage from hand. It relies on reach to be able to finish the game. The hunter deck is the board based deck, and that's what they use to leverage against the odd rogue that is, as you noted, is now missing Cold Blood. So they were able to maintain control of the board through trades and turn it into a race with a little bit of reach advantage from the hunter's hero power and from kill command, and of course all the charge minions that it has access to. So I think that was a great ban strategy from Intrepid Fox.
Yeah, and I mean, it is worth mentioning for that game 4, getting Rexar on 6 helps a little bit. When one team draws Rexar and the other one doesn't, that's a little bit of a difference beyond just going first or going second.
Well, yeah, and in Intrepid Fox, they kind of just ran out of gas, right? Like they're but both teams really kind of were down to Intrepid Fox was really down to 0. Gamers Origin had 2 or 3 cards about the same time, so they had a minor card advantage or hand advantage, but then the hero power just makes up so much ground in that situation. You can't top deck against Build a Beast. You just end up losing that because eventually you top deck a Dire Mole or a Springpaw, and then you cannot challenge those big minions anymore.
Yeah. So yeah. As we saw, like basically this is the rogue missing a lot of pressure for maybe, and we will see the next few weeks. I think we will see how this irons out with the odd rogue and stats and everything like that, because currently the stats is a bit skewed because there's not enough odd rogue stats on the ladder, and we go by basically old matchup stats and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people that loves playing odd rogue needs to go back to the drawing board, find out how to do it, because they can't do the hyper aggressive version or the Cold Blood provided before, and there have to be some change in either changing to something like an even rogue or just changing the whole list as a fully fledged, because the weapon is still good, it's just lacking some of the support tools. But
or you just go back to playing Kalisath again and just shadow step Kalisath and get him that way.
Yeah, like the old tempo rogue. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Can we talk about that Egg Paladin for just a second though? Because like that deck, I love that deck so much, and just seeing especially that one play where Gamer's Origin was clearing off the hyena. There were 2 minions on the 2 beasts, the hyena and 1 other beast on board, and they had 3 eggs, and they shrink ray, trade off the first beast, and then trade both eggs into the hyena to leave themselves with 3. Because we were looking at that play, and I think we saw, well, maybe you can clear off 2 beasts, and knowing how that interaction works was really great ordering, and just a lot of micro attention to detail that you saw just in that one play.
Yeah,
that whole deck is so much fun.
Oh yeah, like if you can get ahead of a really blazing fast start, and you can set up some of your defensive tools, that deck is quite good. We talked about it a great deal going into that or both of the matches that the Paladin had. The first match, the Fox played against it really well. They seemed to know exactly how Gamers Origin was going to sequence their plays with the Paladin, and managed to play around stuff, especially after Geo pulled both Pyromancers out with a call to arms, and they saw that without that, then Shrink Ray is only half as powerful. So they did a great job of playing around it then, but then the Hunter just had no chance against the defensive capabilities of that deck. And once you get into the late game, you start making big 8/8 Mechasaurs, and the game you just cannot beat that without access to like Hunter's Mark and Deadly Shot from the Hunter.
Yeah, we asked if we could win that game, but we didn't ask if we should.
That was it was a great series and all in all, going all the way to the 3-2. So all the 5 games got played, keeping us on the line. It looked a bit like, let's say, gray in the start, basically by going up 2-0, but the Hunter needed to win, and it got the win all the way in the end there. We're gonna take a quick look at the stats before we go further along here, seeing how everything went, and we're still waiting for one match to play out versus Royal Blue Eastbrew versus Sector 1 that is still playing, but we can go quickly through the games that have been played so far. The first match of the day was M&M Gaming versus Oslo Lions, and my boys from Oslo managed to secure that win 3-1, and I'm pretty happy with that. That's a huge win for a Norwegian team.
Yep.
Second, we have the Helsinki Reds beating Nordavind, which is a big setup because Nordavind was like the big favorite going into this. But it's cool to see that even with in like a team format like this, and how everything turns out, it's basically like, well, it's everyone's game, and it's come down to preparation, it's come down to correct play and everything, and Helsinki Reds taking the win. Like the Finns is known to be good Hearthstone players. It's not shocking in any way, but it's a bit upsetting.
Yeah, like Janetsky is secretly like one of the best players around, and he grinds and plays in so many high level events, and I don't think he gets as much recognition as he deserves.
Yeah, going further though, we have Swagoi Gaming beating New Dynasty 3-2. Making its own. New Dynasty is one of the teams that had 0 wins on the board, which is always unfortunate. A little unfortunate, but we have some people from our group that it's probably not feeling quite well at the moment. And then we have one of the newer organizations on the block. Well, I'm not sure how it's not Epic, yeah, because if I pronounce it in Norwegian, it means something completely different. So,
oh.
Hopefully, it's still safe for the stream, but
yeah. So it's pretty interesting to see they winning 3-2 over Ends with Lights as a sub instead of Blaine X. Lights is a lot of people might know her from earlier.
Yeah.
She's one of the best female performers from Europe, and it's actually a top tier player everywhere. Travels to a lot of tour stops there in Europe. Plays or as a finalist in WSG, and is in general doing really well. And she has been practicing as well. She's so good that she also gets to practice with a lot of the good people. I know she practices a lot with Oslo Lions and stuff like that. And then we have, of course, the game we saw with Interpret Fox with the Gamers Origin, where the Foxes managed to edge it out 3-2. So from the score set up now before the last match is finished, it looks like Helsinki Reds is the one with a clean slate on board, and looks like they're coming to stay. It's a strong start in the Swiss.
Yeah, I think if depending on how this this last match winds up, Royal Blues versus Sector 1, it seems a clear pair for the top of the Swiss is going to be Intrepid Vox versus Helsinki Reds, so that's going to be a great match to pay attention to.
Yeah, and Intrepid Fox is going to get a pretty good tiebreaker, being the only team to have beaten Gamers Origin so far.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to help them along too if it does come to that. But I mean, being on top of the leaderboard helps a lot too. You don't need to worry about the tiebreakers quite so much.
Yeah, that's we all know like how Swiss works. It's basically we play a certain amount of rounds, and the one with the best scores get to go to the finals, and you play versus people with the same score. If it's not no one with the same score, you have to play versus someone at a lower bracket, for instance, or higher bracket, depending on. And it's interesting to see, like, if you get a good start, that means also your tiebreakers are most likely good, because that is also players that are like clean slate or like 3-1 or something like that, similar when you first lose, and meaning that their score impacts your score, and then you will have a better standing. So it seems like Helsinki Reds, if they continue this stream forward, they're pretty secure for their top 6 finish.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're just
But we
gonna
will.
be waiting on that. It sounds like they're 2-2. That last match that we're waiting on for round 3, they're tied at 2 and playing game 5 right now.
Yeah, so we will be going to a short break, and we will be back with more Hearts.
Hello there. Welcome back. We're the analyst desk moment at the moment. We were casting just now, but the next match will be casted by Cinder Ascendant together with Wicked Good. I'm here with Delta and Vita. What match are we going to see?
We're going to see Swagger Gaming versus Oslo Lions. These two rosters are currently 2-1 in the standings, so a little bit of a crunch time game here. Just obviously, you don't want to get to that 2 loss, but you want to be up there and about fighting for that ever so important top two position, those top two positions. So I'm personally very excited because I have I have a good friend in Oslo Lions and Alex now, so that's been really interesting to watch them play. And I know a lot of people around this broadcast and our broadcasting group in general has quite a few friends and involvement, etc., in various ways with Swagger Gaming. So overall, pretty solid broadcast, I'd say.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see all the players here. I'm a Oslo boy myself. I live here in Oslo, and I know most of these players. Oslo Lions is one of the oldest Norwegian esports club, and hasn't really been like a big like club in Hearthstone wise, but they're big in Norway, and everyone in Norway knows them. So it's really cool to see them representing us in Oslo here. On the other hand, we have Swogo Gaming, which we all love and know. It's our own caster crew. It's a lot of cool players. It's going to be a great game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
so
check what
yeah.
decks we have here from the teams. As I see it here, we have for Oslo Lions the even lock, the odd mage, the odd. Nope, it's just a mid-range hunter and the cloning gallery priest. Very familiar decks. Which one was banned again?
Even Warlock has been banned for Oslo Lions, so that's not super important right here. Swagger Gaming's lineup is Hunter, the regular mid-range Hunter, with an inclusion of one Wing Blast, which we will return to very shortly. They have the new Master O card Taunt Inner Fire combination priest. They have a Sue Warlock and an Archmage that has been banned. So anything that stands out to you about these decks?
I think it's fun to see that the Sue Warlock is back again on deck or in deck lineups. It was a bit out of the meta because of how strong Odrog was, and it really countered the Warlock. But seeing how we've talked about it a lot, that how Cold Blood is now worse than what it was, and it's not performing as good as it should. It's nice to see that the Sue Warlock has managed to climb itself back.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
really looking forward to seeing the odd mage finally coming out. It was banned last time, and one of them was banned again, Swago aside. But Oslo Lions can finally play the odd mage that I really want to see. What matchup are you, or what deck are you looking forward to in a upcoming match?
I'm looking forward to watching some good old-fashioned Sue Warlock gameplay. I am a very big fan of Sue myself, so I was going to see how these different attacks in the Hunters come to fruition. The Headhunters Hatchet and the flanking strike, not ring blast.
Yeah, myself, I want to see how this inner fire priest is going to shape it out in the matchup. So I'm looking forward to this. So there will be a lot of cool matchup. If we hopefully we go to 5 games and we'll have the conquest. But our casters are getting ready and hyped. So we're setting over to you guys.
Thanks very much, Analyst Desk, and we are getting ready to watch this match between the Oslo Lions and Swagoy Gaming. So I'm back on the desk here with Wicked Good. Looking forward to this one, Wicked.
I am really excited to see this wall priest being played by someone who is more competent at it than I am, because I have been trying to play this deck for at least a couple days now and I cannot get it to do anything. So I'm kind of excited to see Master Oakhart getting back in the meta and summoning out a whole bunch of big fat butts and wrecking some faces.
Right. It's about it's almost about threat saturation with the wall priest. You're just trying to land one of many of the very high health minions that the deck runs, and then if they die, you can just resurrect them and do it again. I was just casting a match last night, and the priest was literally to the 30th card. Inner Fire was the 30th card in the deck. But just the sustainability of the deck let the player get there and deliver lethal with a 48 damage. So we're gonna tell the players to get started here really quickly. But Wicked, I want to get your thoughts on the lineup post the bans. How do you think this is going to play out? Do any of these teams look favored, and does the unfavored team have a specific challenge that they need to get past to win the series?
Yeah, it looks like Sugoi's in pretty good shape. Their Wall Priest is going to be the one that's unfavored against Oslo's remaining lineup. And I don't know if that, I mean, we're looking at data that's coming from HS Replay. I don't know if that's, a lot of people who are like me who are still learning how to play the deck, and because those matchups all generally look kind of unfavored. But the other two decks, Swigoi also brought Zoo Warlock, which is a deck that we haven't seen in a little while. That's kind of seeing a bit of a resurgence from the nerf, and it's going to be a matter of Oslo being able to queue that the mid-range hunter is going to have a couple of toss-ups both in the mirror and against the zoo, and they're going to have to win one of those 50-50s in order to be able to get this win. Oh yeah, the Oslo Lions, I should say, not just we're not in traditional sports where we just refer to teams by the by the city they come from.
Right,
But
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's the zoo just looks so well positioned against Oslo's lineup. The mid range hunter is probably the best one. It's the mid range hunter, it fights for board. It can possibly get initiative and trade away some of those zoo minions. But as you know, Warlock just when you get into the mid game, every card you draw, Warlock is going to draw two. So it's still an uphill challenge for this mid range hunter for Oslo Lions. So we'll have to see if they can get a win against that Zoo Warlock, because I think that's going to be part of the formula here for Oslo to take a win.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Zoo Warlock from Swigoi is that they cut Soul Infusion. And I guess that's a nod to the nerf to Saturday Night Chain Gang. They took Zoo out of the meta to begin with.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out it looks like they're running both Life Drinker and Fungal no, because it was running Despicable Dreadlord before. I'm trying to figure out what they pulled, but it looks like where we are getting into games, so we will table that discussion for another day.
Yep, and we're jumping into the Secret Odd Mage versus the Cloning Gallery Priests. So this is a matchup that tends to favor the mage, if I'm not mistaken. Wicked. The mage just burns so much damage, and that counter spell can play havoc with the very expensive from the Clone Priest.
Yeah, and this is the 4-minion version of the Cloning Gallery Priest, so it gets rid of all of the minions that don't involve burning your opponent's face off. It gets rid of Lyra. It gets rid of oh no, this is actually the Wall Priest that we're seeing from Sugoi. So this is the thing, is that both the teams brought exactly the same classes but completely different decks. So we're getting ourselves turned around. But this is the Wall Priest up against the Secret Mage from Oslo Lions, and I think that is a little bit it's a little bit better for them. This is kind of the one good matchup that the Wall Priest has against Oslo Lions lineup. So, but it's going to be a matter of how fast of a start Oslo Lions can get, because generally if it wants to finish the game quickly, it runs Secret Keeper, it runs obviously the secrets that go along with it. Explosive Runes is a big part of that, and you want to get a Cinderstorm on an empty board and just start burning your opponent's face off. And the big minions from a Wall Priest, you have the Witchwood Grizzly, you have Ziliax is like the smallest one, along with Northstar, the Mosh'Og Protector that we can Mosh'Og Enforcer rather you can see in hand, which is the 8 mana 2/14 taunt. So you have a lot of these big minions that Cinderstorm just doesn't remove and doesn't really, and just soaks up all that damage.
Oh yeah, and the Secret Odd Mage, much like its predecessor, just regular tempo Secret Mage, it relies so much on early minion damage to kind of get them there and set up that lethal with the burn spells. But the Secret Odd Mage, has to rely on hero power trickery to some extent to deliver that damage. So if it can't get in that chip damage, which all these big taunts will have something to say about, then it can be really hard for the mage to close out this match.
Yeah, I mean, you want generally the mage is trying to get most of the way there and then land like a Jan'alai or something like that. And when there's a 2/14 taunt Divine Shield in the way, Ragnaros doesn't do a whole lot if that's where it decides to throw the throw that. But we're a little bit a ways away from that right now, and really not much going on for Swagoi right now. They don't want to be playing this cleric just to have it die on board. They don't need to heal. This looks like a hero power pass turn, and really not much happening for them until like turn 5.
Yeah, just about. Like the Ziliax may come into play, the Grizzly may come into play, depending on how Oslo Lion's hand looks. But actually, looks like Swagoi is thinking about this cleric.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
it does
what
soak
the-
3
what the-
damage.
Yeah, it does soak the damage. But I would have to imagine that they're going to go with the inner fire now and make it a 3/3.
Yeah, and that makes sense because I mean the inner fire plan. I mean you have redundancy in this deck. You don't just run the inner fire. You also have a topsy turvy, and you can pick up another one for Shadow Visions. And ultimately, like the run a 40/40 minion into your face isn't as much of the plan against Odd Secret Mage because you're generally just trying to exhaust their resources, and then you just put a couple of big butts in the way, and that kind of ends the game for you. So I don't mind using the inner fire like this.
And you know the mirror entity that we see the Lions picked up here, that's also an interesting part of this equation, because if at any time Swagoi has to play any of these big minions from hand as opposed to, say, from a Resurrect or from a Master O card, the mirror entity can be really problematic for that priest if it doesn't have a way to remove that taunt.
Yeah, I like the Cinderstorm here though, because you want to get that down going into their turn 5. That's when a lot of their big minions come on board. You get Witchwood Grizzly, you get Ziliax. You don't really have anything that they're playing on 4. So getting and even the counter spell isn't really going to do much here, aside from maybe negate some healing if they decide to use a Divine Hymn or something like that. So I do like them holding off on the secret turn. Next turn they can go Secret Keeper into Kirintor and then take their pick of either counterspell or mirrored entity depending on whatever they want to do, and that's going to be a really awkward turn that they're going to set up for Swagoi in that case.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note too the fact that that this deck does have a bit of spot healing. You have the Ziliax, you have the Divine Hymn, so any of the burn damage that gets applied early on by the mage can usually be cleaned up and made up for by that spot healing. And if they can get into those late game turns where they can drop those big minions, that's kind of what puts this priest ahead of the secret mage in the matchup chart.
Yeah, and you also can revive Ziliax too.
Yeah,
and you can revive and then buff them. So that's going to be kind of their late game healing. They only do run 1 copy of the Divine Hymn in the deck. So there's no opportunity to get another one or get anything from Shadow Visions, but getting you to a full heal back up and starting the clock over from the beginning against the Odd Secret Mage is probably the right way to go. More secrets come into hand for Oslo Lions right now. I would have to imagine if Secret Keeper Kirintor turn, just a matter of which secret they want to play. Do they want to be able to counter something like a Mass Hysteria, or do they want to be able to get a copy of a big toughness minion?
With Swagoi resetting themselves to 30, it's on Oslo Lions to recreate some pressure here. So the Secret Keeper Kirintor Mage seems like almost a give me as far as turn strategy goes. But yeah, the choice of spell is interesting, and I do think I like holding the mirror entity for the later turns, like that turn 8, turn 9, where you might be able to catch like the Mashog Enforcer. But look at this, Max Hysteria coming off the top for Swagoi. That might put a dent in this board development from the Oslo Lions.
Yeah, I mean the deck lists are open. They will be able to see that there are 2 copies of Counterspell, 2 copies of Runes, and in the deck, and the 1 copy of Mirror Entity as well. So it's like a 2 and 5. I don't like those odds, especially because you don't have another spell to try to trigger it. They're gonna get the news from this that is in fact Counterspell.
Right, so they're gonna have to find some way to trigger that Counterspell before they can address this board.
Yeah.
But the Ziliax is, I like that as the test play to poke the trap and or poke the secret, see which one it is. Because if a 3/2 gets stuck on board, you're kind of in the same position as you were before, and you have the Mass Hysteria.
Yeah,
so
a 3/2 Divine Shield is much better than a 3/9.
Right.
Yeah,
so this will top off the healing a little bit too.
Yeah, that'll also help to heal. Again, keeps them back up at full. There's a Clockwork Automaton, which is an interesting addition to this deck, because it does let you double the damage of the hero power. With 1 on board, it's 2, and if you happen to stick 2 on board, then you end up making your own rag shot, which is pretty nice.
And they also combine quite nicely with the Daring Fire Eater, because you always add before you multiply, according to Hearthstone. So you can make some pretty. This is kind of how the mage makes up for not having Fireball, not having access to Pyroblasts for some of the mage decks that run that. This is how he gets the top end burn going aside from Ragnaros. So it's we'll probably see that automaton come into play in the late game.
I wonder if you ever put down the cleric and try to divine spirit it just to try to bait out this counterspell.
Well,
it seems like a terrible idea, but it might be something that you feel like you start to need to do. I mean, you may as well play this Grizzly out first. I mean, there is resurrection in the deck. Oh, that Fungal Mancer is going to be brutal.
Wow.
Oof. There is resurrection in this deck, so you kind of do want these minions to come out just to die. But I wouldn't expect that a 3/8 taunt is going to keep all these minions at bay, most likely. But it is going to soak some burn, so there is that to say for it too.
Yeah, and there's not much burn available for the mage at this moment. There's they still are sitting on two secrets, the automaton, which isn't going to come into play here. So it's either it's Fungal Mancer is pretty much the only play unless they want a hero power. And if they hero power, they'll get the card, but they'll greatly reduce the power of their board. So I imagine, then again, with the Fungal Mancer, the only way they're going to push any damage is if they put it in between the Black Cat and the Pyromaniac. So this is, I guess they can do it either way. It's 4 damage, so they can put it in between either one actually. But yeah, they have to do this if they want to push any damage.
They have to, yeah. They don't really have another way to do. I mean, they could put the minions in and then power it, but that doesn't really do as much, and then that takes away the Fungal Mancer. And this is a pretty good sized board. They are going to use the Divine Spirit here on one of the opposing minions to test for that counterspell. It's not even a test; they know it's a counterspell, and now be able to use the Mass Hysteria. It makes more sense to do that in this turn because now it doesn't give the Oslo Lions a chance to reset the counterspell after having burned the first one.
Yeah, and I really actually like last turn Oslo Lions playing that Dire Mole because that kind of messed up the consistency of the Mass Hysteria and actually put them in this position here to have a minion on board still and be able to push some more damage. So the counterspell's going to come in and the Mirror Entity, and now we've got a 6/7, 1 mana 6/7 Wicked, just sending it all that damage.
I put that in my deck, and it's going into turn 8. And turn 8 is the turn where the Mashog Enforcer comes online. So now, again, you're putting Sugoi in a really difficult position. You know that, one of these could be a mirror entity because you have access to the lists. So do you try to put it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you do want to soak the explosive runes if that's what it is, but you certainly do not want to give them their own, mini wall. I don't know what a small wall is, like a knee wall,
fence?
I guess. A knee wall,
a partition.
Well,
there looks like Swagoi is thinking about testing the secret with the cleric, and they commit to it. They're gonna find out that it's mirror entity, so it's gonna be up to the Tar Creeper to block the damage from that 6/7 Secret Keeper, and that's a precarious position.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's kicking the can down the road a little bit. I mean, they can actually clear this with what Oslo Lions can with what's in hand with the Fire Eater, the Automaton, and a Hero Power, which is kind of disgusting when you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's an absurd. Yeah, like, hey, what if we had Ragnaros, but we just targeted it? How does that sound? That sounds pretty good.
Well, Garrosh, eat your heart out. The Sulfuris isn't even that good, so looks like they're going to commit to it, at least with the Automaton.
Yeah.
So that's a 4 damage hero power.
Yeah, they could also use the cleric to trade off the rest.
True.
Like they're not getting
as if
value out of it.
No.
I guess they are a little bit because it does keep Swagoi from being able to heal, but that's not worth giving up the Fire Eater when you're going to have to when you know that there are bigger things coming down the line.
Oh yeah, and this actually sets up a more damage next turn, which is really important because if Oslo has made the read that they had a better minion on 8, but they tested the secret with the cleric, then they know that there's going to be a big minion coming down right now. So if they hold the Fire Eater, now they can set up the burst combination with that Automaton and maybe finish the game depending on the top deck.
Right. And you saw Oslo Lions thinking a long time about whether to play that Firefly or not. And I think that was a nod to Psychic Scream. Even with the counterspell up, there are ways for... Oh my god! How much damage is that?
I believe
So
that's
that's
12,
That's
right?
gonna be 6/12.
2,
Yeah.
4, 6 doubled. It's 12. That's just
Holy
lethal off the top.
Wow! Oh, I'm gonna be
Unbelievable.
sick. Wow.
Oslo Lions, this was one of their most difficult matchups coming into the best of
Wow.
5 Wicked, and they pulled it off with an amazing top deck with that
Oh.
Daring Fire Eater. Now, in their credit, there were some other top decks that could have gotten them there. They could have, pulled a Cinderstorm and gotten lucky on the RNG. They could have. There's a few things that could have happened there.
There's a second
But
copy
my
of Automaton that
goodness.
would have doubled it
Yeah.
again. Yeah, but that just 12 damage over a 214 taunt. Good night.
So that puts the Oslo Lions in a much better position to possibly pull this match out. This basically evens up the lineup chart. Now they're about even. There's like 3 50-50s and one favored out of 3 for Oslo as far as the raw numbers go. So this now becomes extremely winnable for the Oslo Lions, and Swagoi really needs to buckle down to recover from this 1-0 deficit.
Yeah, they do. This is going to be a big test for this squad that's been doing very well. I mean, again, they were talking about it on the analyst desk how they're, very, active in the same community that a lot of the us casters are in as well, and friends with a bunch of people in this small group. But they've been, very slowly making a name for themselves in the scene, and this is going to be a really big test for them, being able to overcome losing that favorable matchup, and that only favorable matchup for that wall priest. And now we're going into the hunter mirror.
Yeah. So this is going to be a question of a little bit of who goes first, but also of deck choices. And Oslo is running. They're still running the old candle shot version, while Swagoi has switched to the one that we saw in the last series. They had the single headhunter's hatchet.
Yeah, and they also they run a copy of Revenge of the Wild, and they also run one copy of Wing Blast. And I do wonder how relevant that's going to be. I think it could be very, because
absolutely,
being able to just remove one extra minion for 1 mana could be extremely relevant in a matchup like this, where it really just comes down to who can hold the board for like 1 more turn.
Yeah, well, Wing Blast it has a high chance of having its mana reduced because you have access to like the Spring Paw that we see here from Swagoi, as well as Unleash the Hounds. But it also, the 4 damage from Wing Blast matches up perfectly with Animal Companion, and I think that's one of the 2 big uses. The other one being you get to deal with hyenas that get powered up early on.
Well, not only that, but links into Wing Blast in order to clear Tundra Rhino is also relevant.
Yeah, so Wing Blast, that I think this is absolutely a nod to the mirror match. It's the reason why this hunter matchup even exists, because they didn't want to ban it. They teched specifically for it. Yes. So far, though, a little bit of back and forth from both teams. Swagoi playing the hyena naked on board and challenging the Oslo Lions to have an answer for it on board, which we see that they don't have a clean way to answer it without perhaps utilizing the coin and getting a huffer. But that's
they could coin Unleash the Hounds. It's not pretty, but that would be one guaranteed way to clear it.
Yeah, but throwing away the coin for that, throwing away an Unleash the Hound, which will be very powerful later. They may just hero power pass here.
Yeah, I mean,
we're also tracking.
The thing is that the hyena's not really a threat when you don't have anything on board.
Exactly.
So they can take an extra turn to kind of set themselves up to be able to deal with it. That Spring Paw, though, that with the coin is a much cleaner way to deal with that, and it preserves. Yeah. Or actually, you don't even need to use the coin; just use your face. There you go. So preserve the coin, and it gives you another links in hand. That was really good use of track right there.
And they did have to pitch the Revenge of the Wild to do that, though, and that one copy that they have is now gone and not going to be part of this matchup's calculations. But not a bad turn 3 coming up for Oslo, but Misha's probably the minion you wanted to roll for Swagoi here.
Yeah, that's going to make this a little bit awkward because you can't really... I mean, they're going to try to roll poison off this Crackling Razor Maw, it looks like. That's that's going to be the best result. And if they don't, this could start getting a little bit out of hand. +3 attack does it too. Yes, they have 2 rolls for it, so that's fine.
Yeah,
that gets the job done. Yeah,
so
but that flanking strike that's in hand for Swagoi will probably answer that pretty cleanly.
Yeah, these hunter mirrors.
They even could Timberwolf and Lynx if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kind of ways to do it, and the way these mirror matches tend to go, it's all about initiative. You know, who can keep the board versus having to give it up. You know, the removal and the tempo removals like the flanking strike make a big difference, and also card advantage. You know, if you use a Lynx plus a Direwolf Alpha, you're using 2 cards to answer 1, and that can make a big difference in the long term.
Yeah, and there's also something to be said for the fact that there is a Revenge in the Wild in hand for Swagoi.
Yeah,
and that can bring that Lynx back along with some other things, and double tracking in hand for Swagoi, and they pretty much have to use one here because they're starting to run out of options in hand. Tundra Rhino, Master's Call, Timberwolf.
Yeah,
either one of those. Yeah, either one of those is tough to give up. The Master's Call or the Timberwolf.
I feel like you can pass up on the Timberwolf here because you have one in hand, right? So
yeah. No, I meant the Tundra Rhino is what I meant to say. Right. Yeah. So we're gonna probably trade off that 4-3, and then there's a matter of the 1-3 into the 1-1.
And so this will be at least a clean trade on the Misha at the very least. Swagoi considering, I mean, they still have a tracking in hand. They still could possibly pick up something for 2 mana, and they might be considering what they might be able to pull to make a clean clear on that Dire Mole. But I don't know. That's a fairly risky tracking.
You could also just Master's Call and just use the mana.
Right.
Oh wow, this seems like
they're gonna go for the revenge.
Oh, because you get the wolf.
The
back.
rush,
Okay.
right? The rush comes back. So this
that's actually really clean. I forgot that they just killed off the wolf. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, Revenge of the Wild. It's not a flashy card. I think people, when it first came out, people were thinking about huge burst turns with charging Devil Swords and King Crush, but really, its basic utility is for turns like this, where you're not getting a ton of value, but it's enough to push you over the edge and retake the board.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Oslo Lions has a full clear here if they want it with Coin, Timberwolf, Scavenging Hyena, Unleash the Hounds, and it looks like that's exactly what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Because the 2 hounds go into the 4-3, the weapon goes into the 1-1, or whichever, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And then you have a big Scavenging Hyena that you're challenging Swagoi to deal with after they just used most of their hand to deal with their board last turn.
And a 7/4 for 2 mana, that is a big minion for Swagoi to answer. And now Swagoi probably is thinking real hard about where in the world that Wing Blast is.
Yeah, but I think Master's Call to try to get some sort of a charger, get the Spring Paw, try to get the poison or the +3 attack again, and hope that's what it is, because otherwise this game's going to be over in a hurry. Do not
miss the roll. And what's the pick here, Wicked? This is a tough pick. They didn't get what they wanted.
I don't even know. I mean, maybe, yeah, I guess just the +3 health to take that off, but I mean that actually helps it creates more damage.
Yeah.
Oof. And we're just hearing from production that we have an update on New Dynasty versus Ents, that New Dynasty has won 3-0 and eliminated Ents for the tournament. So that's an update for you from around the rest of the tournament. But right now, this Hyena looks like it could potentially go unchallenged for a second turn.
Yeah, and this is a huge board for the Oslo Lions.
Yeah, and Oslo Lions giving it a good thought about whether to trade off this 1/1. Does that Rexar do anything? Not yet, right?
Not yet. I mean, Swagoi has to answer this 8/5. They cannot let this stick. No. And Rexar is, I think, too passive of a play.
Does Dire Frenzy get you there?
Not quite. I think they're going to have to take a roll on the Razor Maw. But the Razor Maw, even if they get a +1/+1, then the Dire Frenzy lets them get there. Poisonous.
Well, they got Poisonous is pretty good. I wonder if they Dire Frenzy before they trade in. Yeah, no, looks like they're not. That's not the plan. 4/4 Rush Poisonous could be pretty good, but they clearly have other plans for that Dire Frenzy potentially going on the Crackling Razor Maw, which is also a really powerful play.
I mean, this is still a 6/5. It's almost a Scavenging Hyena that Oslo has to answer, and they're down to a single card, so they don't have a great time at.
Yep. Yeah, and we're also hearing the Intrepid Fox has just beat Helsinki Reds and has gone up to 4-0 in top place in the tournament. So congratulations to them. This, I didn't get to see what the pick was, but we'll see what the beast that comes out. And
Cave Hydra.
Cave Hydra with Lifesteal and Rush.
Rush. Oh, that's so good.
Wow.
That with the amount of cards that Swagoy is down to, that is an incredibly powerful Zombeast. And a kill command coming off the tracking to clear the 6/5.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I wonder about that. I wonder if that was that much of an emergency, but they clearly felt like that was pretty critical to get rid of. And worth noting that Swagoy has also given up both copies of Master Ball now because the second one went in the tracking. So even though they have those 3/6/5 Dire Frenzy into the deck, they don't have a good way to get them out, which is usually what makes them really powerful. So, but I mean, when both teams have Rexar, then all bets are off anyway.
Yeah, this match is about to get really interesting because with both hunters more or less running out of gas, not a lot of powerful cards in either hand, except the Cave Hydra is pretty big, but this Razor Maw off the top was great, but this becomes a Build-A-Beast battle. Who can and it becomes a real chess match trying to not only select the best combination of beasts for yourself, but also trying to outthink your opponent's Build-A-Beast strategy. This is a totally new game, Wicked.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking like it was about to become a blowout on one or the other, and now it's going to be just big boys bouncing into big boys. And
that does sound like a YouTube video I would watch. However, we're going to be thinking about the other thing too is.
Wow, 6. So that is a Halazi with Wind Fury that just dumped a whole bunch of Lynxes into the hand. I don't think that Oslo Lions is going to be too upset about having to burn a card, given what's probably left in their deck. Though this 4 mana 2/2 Divine Shield Poison is get another beast is pretty good too. Into a 5 mana 5/4 Adapt if they want it. They also can choose to use the Lynxes or the Crackling Razor Maw to try to remove this. This is fledgling one of the options.
Well, I mean, we talked about, what's the right beast. I think Oslo has got their finger on the pulse that being able to address whatever the heck you make by way of all of these pings, plus Cave Hydra, plus the Crackling Razor Maw, that is a hard hand to beat in this zombie duel. Because they're going to kind of be on the advantage no matter what Swagoy plays here.
Right, and they do decide to go for the Adapt 4/5. And not Poisonous coming off of that Adapt, and just going to put a taunt out. Animal Companion is a fairly big burn, but I mean, at this point, when you're making beasts every turn, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that the Oslo Lions would be really worried about burning is that second Scavenging Hyena. Yeah. If they burn that with this hand, they'd be really mad. But I think this is okay. But the missed Adapt from Swagoy is a big deal. Like a taunt minion here just does nothing because they just dropped Halazi and got a bunch of 1/1s. Yeah. So this is a tough turn, tough beat for Swagoy.
Yeah, and this Cave Hydra could also really help clean up this board if they want to. Though not now that they've used the hero power, but they could have used the Lynx and along with the Cage Hydra, the Lynxes rather, along with the Cave Hydra to try to clear off a lot of this board. But maybe they're saving that for something a little bit more substantial or waiting until the lifesteal is a little bit more relevant, and you can't fault them for either one of those choices. Going to adapt this Lynx, make it a +1/+1 to be able to trade off this 2/2 poison after the other Lynx takes off the Divine Shield, and all of a sudden this is starting to get very, very scary for Sugoi Gaming.
Yeah, this is also the 8 p.m. here from Oslo. Very well done to get all those sequences out of hand. But yeah, another a fairly large Wind Fury minion stuck on the board for the Oslo Lions. So Swagoi now having to play defense. Well, the results just keep running in. Sector 1 has taken a loss to M&M Gaming 3-1. We're still in game 2, and a lot of these series are finished.
That is a charging 5-8. Wow.
It's unfortunate that Swagoi didn't have another 1-drop in hand to activate the taunt on the big bird there on the nesting rock, but the charge at least clears the board and does seize the board away from the Oslo Alliance. So Oslo still has a pretty strong hand for addressing the board, but Bloatbat, that's always nice to see.
You're pretty much, I mean, you have to have a good reason to not take the Bloatbat. I don't think they have one with these other two. Kodo could be okay to deal with, you know, some of the smaller minions, but I mean, Bloatbat does a pretty good job of doing that too.
Yeah, like 2 things to consider when you're building a beast. The 5 mana is always a very risky pull because you might not get offered a 3 or less on the next and not be able to play it on the same turn you build a beast. And then also there's not a lot of like strong 2 attack beasts that you have to consider clipping. But yeah, this is, look at that, the Poisonous Rush plus the Bloatbat. That's not what he took.
They ended up taking that. Yeah, so they can clear off. They can get a full clear with
the board
that
here
if they want it, because they can. That'll kill the 1/3 and then trade off the 5/4.
Yeah, absolutely. This will do it. The Kodo takes the Dire Mole and then the trade from the charge.
It's a Bloatbat that value trades.
So yeah, Oslo manages to re-seize the board here, and again, like this is like a Build-A-Beast duel. It's getting the absolute right combination of effects and mana usage to be able to seize the board and keep the opponent off. And then we're going to see a lot of back and forth here, I would think, Wicked, before this match is totally finished.
Yeah, and there was an interesting choice there by Swagoi, whether to hero power or play one of the 5-drops and then Dire Frenzy it. Decided to take that 4/5 rushing Crackling Razor Maw with Lifesteal, and then they can potentially Dire Frenzy that as well, which is going to be a really, really powerful play if that's what they decide to do.
Well, you know, I don't dislike Swagoi holding on to a Dire. Well, they're going to use it now, but if they would have held on to the Dire Frenzy, it would, you know, the longer this game goes, the more powerful the Dire Frenzy becomes because you have a better chance of pulling the Dire Frenzied minions out of the deck. But this flips the board once again back to Swagoi 7-4 with more Crackling Razor Maws buffed up in the deck. So that could be a huge swing in the coming turns.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the Crackling Razor Maw specifically, is that it makes the rest of the beasts you're generating with your hero power better. And it also being 4 mana, you can fit that in with one of the whiffs from the hero power and then make that into something better. So I do like that play from them. You know, it's hard to tell without knowing what they took for the first half to see what they should take for the second, but they can have a poisonous minion if they want it. Just a matter of, you know, how fast and how resilient that poisonous minion is.
Yeah, the Skitterer, I mean, the body is so weak. It's just the fact that it has Poisonous and Rush in the same package that makes it something that's considered. And looks like they took the Basilisk, so they have a Nesting Rock, Basilisk, and that's actually not a terrible setup.
I kind of like that.
Yeah,
you know, because I mean, next turn you can just go ahead and drop like 2 Lynxes and then play that alongside it, and then you've got a 5/8 Taunt Poisonous Divine Shield. That's pretty okay.
Or they're going to do it this way, actually. They're going to secure the board with a bunch of small minions now, and if Swagoi can't clear these 2 minions, then they'll be able to build a beast and drop the zombies with the Nesting Rock effect.
Yeah, that's, I mean, either way they win, though they are starting to run out of stuff in hand, and Swagoi is starting to keep some of this value in hand. Scavenging Hyena, Plated Beetle, both reasonable picks. Looks like they took the Hyena. Hyena with Rush is pretty good.
Ooh, yeah.
With Echo and Rush.
Stealth would also be. Oh yeah, the echo effect is enormous on that
Wind
beast.
Fury's also reasonable.
Yeah, those are great choices here.
Yeah, because I mean they could take Wind Fury and they could unleash the hounds to take out that 4/2.
And if they pick up a Tundra Rhino too, that would be enormous. Oh, they went with the big stealth.
That's fine too. Just leave this on the board, let it sit there and get bigger. And the Scavenging Hyena is kind of stranded in hand, but probably not too upset about that, or Oslo Lions, given that they know that they can play this Nesting Rock unless they find something better off of the Build-A-Beast.
So the Gurbashi Chicken is actually an interesting choice with the Build-A-Beast capabilities, because then you have the health to kind of back it up. A Stegodon even would be a nice addition to that big overkill effect.
Yeah, and Arfis is also a reasonable pick sometimes, because sometimes one of those Death Knight cards is just enough to, you know, give you an emergency board clear, or to be able to get a Frostmourne. 7 mana 3/3 Divine Shield Poisonous Arfis. That's a very good boy.
Yeah, it's doesn't threaten the board too much, but it can potentially have a big swing play packaged into it.
Yeah,
but yeah, that Nesting Rock with Divine Shield is going to keep that hyena at bay for the moment.
Yeah, I think that Oslo Lions is kind of banking on the fact that that's going to buy them a turn to be able to get this Arfis down. So they can kind of be a little bit greedier with this pick. And they always do have the Cave Hydra if things do go south. Though multiple copies of Unleash the Hounds with that Stealth Hydra on board can get pretty big.
So I think they're gonna use this in combination with the Flanking Strike and clear off the Razor Maw.
Yeah.
They're also thinking about the Kill Command, but I think I would.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
Kill Command and one trade.
Oh, they
will
have to
deal
do the
with-
Kill Command. Okay.
Wow,
This
huge.
beast is so big.
Wow.
19 damage hitting face.
That is,
And
as
all of
they
a
say,
sudden-
how you make the big noise.
And all of a sudden, Oslo Lions are painted into a corner. They have no way to answer this 1913 that set them up for a 2-turn lethal from 35 health.
They need to find a taunt off of this Build-A-Beast. And
Yeah,
then
they have
and then something. I don't even know what you do after that, but that's kind of step one, because like I don't think they have enough damage in hand to be able to deal with this. I guess what they're looking at is, you know, so the Zombies is going to be 4, 6, 8 with the Lynxes, plus 5 from the Kill Command is 13, so they can do that and clear this all off.
Yeah.
That is an option. So that's exactly 10 mana, and then they'll have their 1/4 left on board. Is that too much to sink into this minion? I don't think it is.
You have to. You do it or you die.
Well,
There's
you
no
roll the dice.
roll
with
the
with
Build-A-Beast
hero
first.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no,
Look
you
at this.
can't if you're doing this because it's 10 mana specifically.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they could
Oh,
also use
they're-
the Dire Frenzy to do this. That's another
Okay.
way to do this. Yeah. So the Dire Frenzy, that's going to be 5, 7, and
the Kill Command.
and then you finish it off with the Tundra Wolf.
Oh my
with the
goodness.
Timberwolf. Wow,
So
that's
many
a
cards
lot.
have dumped into that.
I don't
mean, they
know
really
that that's better than the other play though. Like that's still a lot of resources, including that Kill Command that they just sank in. Now, granted, they can get more healing off of that Cave Hydra later, but it seems like that was a lot to sink into that one minion. Granted, they needed to remove it, but
Yeah, and also considering the Dire Frenzy effects. So the Oslo Lions have dumped in Rush minions off the Dire Frenzy. Swagoi did not. They put in the Crackling Razor Maws.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of an initiative benefit, a little bit of an initiative advantage that has gone to the Oslo Lions based off that usage. But right now, Swagoi has the initiative, and they are building a board here. Wicked good. This is going to end up being a counter lethal setup almost. As the Razor Maw might just get them there.
Yeah, they could have decided to stealth that other minion too. The whatever, I forget what the name of it is, and I can't see it behind the cards. But they could have stealthed both of them, and decided to just stealth the one and leave the 4/8 up. But I don't think that 4/8 is probably going anywhere. And again, this is, we talked in the last series about how much you miss Cold Blood. It's not as much with this deck, but you are definitely missing Hunter's Mark. Like not having access to Hunter's Mark to be able to remove one of these big minions and keep pushing Like you're seeing what that effect is, and how many resources Oz Alliance is having to sink into all these big minions in order to be able to clear them.
And my conversations with some very regular hunter players, they think that 2 mana hunter's mark is fine, and not only fine
Yeah.
but practically necessary if you're going to continue to try and build a tempo based deck. And we can see the effect of not having it in this match specifically. And look at this, here come the Razor Maws coming out of the deck from that Dire Frenzy earlier on.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting setup that Oz Alliance has here, putting that taunt in front of the hyena, which also has poison, saying that that hyena is going to get bigger. But it doesn't really look like Sugoi super cares about the hyena if they could just push lethal.
Right.
Getting Wind Fury on both minions and then flanking strike in the 7/8 will take out this minion. That's gonna be 18 damage to face, and Swagoi has found a way.
Well, that on the back of that enormous hyena and then some very good rolls off of the Razor Maws, that brings Swagoi back into this match. So now 1-1 for both teams, Swagoi and the Oslo Alliance. So now the Hunter is retired, the Secret Odd Mage is retired, and we are down to basically a best-of-3 series.
Yeah, and you know, Sugoi really showing a lot of patience and a lot of skill with how they were picking out those beasts, and that lethal setup was definitely like just putting 2 big butts on the board, stealthing one so it couldn't get removed, and then just daring Oslo Alliance to be able to find a way to answer it. And again, with no hunter's mark and no clean way to do it, you're relying on rolling Poisonous off of adapt effects, and you can do that a lot, but you can't do that all the time.
Can't do it forever. And this now puts a couple of interesting intersections in these lineups together. So the Oslo Lions have to find a way to win with this Clone Priest. It does not have a really strong matchup to either of the remaining 2 decks for Swagoi. And Oslo has to find a way to beat the Zoo Warlock because they don't have a strong way to deal with these big boards from the Zoo that the Zoo can do. There's only so many Mass Hysterias and Psychic Screams available to the Priest, and the Zula Warlock can just keep pumping out minions.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the Oslo Lions probably wants to get that cloning priest into Swagoi's priest because they can go over taunts.
Yeah.
The Zoo Warlock is a miserable matchup for the cloning gallery priest, especially the 4 minion version. Like, you have a lot of clears, but you don't have any way to mitigate some of the mid-range boards. You end up having to commit clears to, especially against a Zoo that can buff their minions and make not semi-threatening boards into extremely threatening boards. You don't have as many options to be able to kind of mitigate a lot of that damage. So they really want to get the cloning gallery priest into the wall priest. And right now we're going to try to get that mid hunter through first.
Yeah, I do like the mid hunter queue here as well because they have a pretty good chance of beating the Zoo if they can go first, which they did, and if they can secure initiative on the board, which they might, given the textures of the opening hands. Because I think they want to try and get 2 shots with the cloning gallery priest, because the way that clone priest works is sometimes you roll bad and sometimes you roll real good.
Sometimes you just don't draw your stuff, and this is a miserable tracking.
Yeah, it is
for Oslo Lions. This is the tracking that I have to tell people on my podcast that tracking is a good card to combat trackings like this.
Right.
Because having to give up either both Spring Paws or 1 Spring Paw and 1 Timberwolf in the early game against a Zoo is rough.
Yeah, those rush minions are very, very important for the Hunter to try and secure the board against the Zoo. But the Hunter just had to give up the board to the Zoolock. The Zoolock doesn't have a great hand here, though.
Yeah,
they don't want to just play the Voodoo Priests by itself, and the Librarian would just get picked off by the Candle Shot. So they just had to tap and pass.
Yeah, I kind of question that a little bit, because you could have Kobold Librarian and saw if you found either a Light Warden or a Happy Ghoul, and then you'd be able to use the Voodoo Doctor. And even then, you're still getting 2 minions on board. They're not likely to live, but at least it's starting to build up a board rather than just passing initiative back to the Hunter.
Yeah.
Though I guess in this case it would have been a complete disaster had they done that with the hyena.
True.
So it's probably better
Yeah.
off that they didn't.
And maybe Swagoi was considering the fact that they're holding Despicable Dreadlord, which can do quite a bit of damage to some of these hunter boards. But Swagoi going to go ahead and utilize the coin and get rid of the threat of that hyena and equalize the board. But this flanking strike gonna let the hunter stay on board and continue to make the Zulak play some defense here.
Yeah, and there's a lot. Nobody's playing around silence right now. Like, because there are not many decks that are running silence, so having access to the Spellbreaker against something like a hyena is actually a really big deal. And there is Keliseth into the hand, a little bit late to the party, but not super late, just fashionably late.
Yeah, and but it's an awkward hand. Yeah, it's an awkward hand though, because if you play Keliseth, you just tap. That's your play.
Yeah.
So
Well, you
I think
can
Swagoi.
you can start with Librarian and see where you go from there.
But you're still giving up the board, I think, to the hunter in this position. So
Yeah.
I think they wanted to put down the 2/3s just to try to contest the board. But second hyena now coming into the hand though for Oslo Lions, and this is gonna be problematic.
Yeah, and this is going to really ruin the setup that I think Swagoi was going for, was to get that Dreadlord down to take out this 4/3, and the Timberwolf is coming along behind it. But if you do that now you're just making the hyena angry.
And this is I really like the way they did this too. They've actually just kind of went all in on all the resources they had on the board, because they just saw the Spellbreaker, and if they get above 4 health, there's not going to be a way for the Zoo to answer a hyena that big.
Right, Soulfire is kind of their best hope, and that's not going to be an option if they can get it above 4 health. And now you also have a 1/1 that's pumping up the rest of your minions. You have a 9/5 hyena after you just used. Do they run double Spellbreakers, Swagoi? I have to see.
I can check on that, but Voodoo Doctor off the top is
they do run
wanted.
2 Spellbreakers.
Okay.
So, but that's, I mean, they're not gonna be able to tap into that. They can look for it with the Librarian. Well, they can put another couple of butts in the way. That'll do something.
That's helpful, but a top deck, a Razor Maw off the top will have something to say about it.
Oh my goodness, this could be a huge roll. Oh, they're actually putting it on the Timberwolf to try to keep it alive.
No, I absolutely agree with that. The poison's
or
going to come in.
Poisonous.
That is lethal, my friend, because that's going to push that's going to push that big. Oh, I'm sorry, that's one off of lethal. One off. I 29 for sure. I was expecting the
there's
the
the
die to the trade, but yeah, but what does the Warlock do though?
Well, okay, so if you use both Voodoo Doctors, right, and you Spellbreaker the 2/2, you trade off the 3/2. Are you still dead? I think you are, because you'll be at 5. They'll have a 2/2, a weapon, and a hero power, and you're still dead. But it's a valiant effort.
Yeah, there was no material for Swagoi to trade with. So that now puts the Oslo Lions up 2-1 in this series. One of the things that we talked about, they had to find a way to beat the Zoo Warlock, and they did it. So now Swagoi is in the corner. They must win their next 2 matches in order to win this series. Oslo just needs to win 1 out of 2 remaining matches with the Cloning Gallery Priest, and I think that's exactly how they wanted to line up this series.
Yeah, and we're going to go right into the next game. I would expect to see this Zoo coming out from... Yep, they're going right back to the Zoo, and I would expect that's the way you want to do it. Like, the Zoo is the stats don't really tell the story, probably because it's saying it's a 57% win rate, the Zoo against Cloning Gallery Priest. But especially, that's including all the versions. This version specifically that does not have the early minions outside of Radiant Elemental, it is a much tougher climb against a deck that does nothing but present constant aggression and use up your limited clears very early. Oslo Lions very smartly keeping the Holy Smite, which is they're not going to win this game through an OTK. Very likely,
no.
and if they are, they probably will only need 1 Mind Blast to do it.
Right, it'll be like a
Yeah,
they need like 1 Mind Blast maybe after the Swagoi is tapped enough. But yeah, 2 Holy Smites and a Shadow Visions. This is a fairly decent hand to be facing off against this Zulak.
Yeah, though this Swagoi's like 1 heal away from this hand being ridiculous. So they have the Light Warrior and they have a Happy Ghoul. They have Solarium for refill. All they need is one way to heal their face, and things can get out of hand in a hurry.
And I have to say I think I disagree with committing a Light Warden here, because for the exact reason that you just said. The Happy Ghoul is two parts of a 3-punch combo that could really get them going on board, and they could have dropped the 1/3 Voidwalker for basically the same amount of pressure.
Yeah, and they're not healing it on turn 2 anyway. They don't
Right.
have any way to. They didn't have anything damaged unless Oslo had like a brain fart and decided to throw the smite into the Voidwalker, which they wouldn't have. So yeah, I
Right,
agree
so
with
then-
you on that.
Yeah, then this forces Swagoi to tap on 2, which feels bad, but the Fungal Enchanter came into hand, and that's going to activate the Happy Ghoul. So 6/6 on deck for the Zoolock, but the Priest is at 30, so they've got time to start drawing into some answers.
Yeah, and they have choices of removals here. Get some extra removal off this Shadow Visions. They have Spirit Lash for now, or they have Psychic Scream for later. I would imagine Vivid Nightmare too ambitious. Psychic Scream does seem good though, because once you can get them down to 2 minions a turn, you can generally address them. It's just getting through these initial waves,
Right.
that can be the problem. And Swagoi now having to try to figure out how they play around coin Mass Hysteria, which is very likely. I mean, we could see it's almost definitely on the menu for next turn, but they
Sure.
have to be thinking about Mass Hysteria and very soon Psychic Scream for every turn going forward.
I don't even mind the option of doing a Mass Dispel on 4, because they're at 30 and they're not under a ton of pressure. They know they can scream on the next turn. It's whether or not they can sink 2 turns of damage prior to hitting the Mass Hysteria on 5,
Yeah.
which they might be able to, but it is a risky play.
Yeah, I mean, Mass Dispel is also good for diffusing things like Fungal Mancer, like Light
Yeah.
Warden, even though they've already seen one. Getting taunts out of the way of a Ziliax perchance. Like, there are other things that Mass Dispel does for you in this matchup that might make it a little bit too valuable for that. But it's not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
Well, let's see if they didn't address the board now, like if they Mass Dispel this, that leaves 9 power on board, would set on the next turn would set them to 13 plus whatever. So Fungal Enchanter probably worse, or Fungal
Fungal
Mancer.
Mancer is the reason I don't think you can do that, because Fungal Mancer
Right,
just
yeah.
puts you down too low. You have Velen Lash is a long way away. You don't have a Spirit Lash in hand anyway. They are going to go with the Mass Dispel. I don't know about this. I mean, we could see there's no Fungal Mancer in hand, so this is fairly safe. And I mean, it does pump up the Spellstone, but there's nothing for the Spellstone to do right now.
Right, and I think it's probably it's kind of along the lines that we were just talking about. This allows them to do 3 repetitive clears in a row. Mass Hysteria on 5, Coin Psychic Scream on 6, and then Psychic Scream on 7 if they need to.
Yeah.
And I think Oslo Lions are going to be really happy to see that they tapped and played a 1 attack minion on this turn.
Duke find the Radiant Elemental. That will be helpful for even just putting into the res pool. Take out everything but the Tar Creeper with that Mass Hysteria, which is completely fine from Oslo Lions' point of view.
I think they're more than happy to leave a 1 attack minion up, because it's not as if they need to trade into that minion. So the attack benefit of being off turn doesn't really come into play for the Tar Creeper here. So just a 1/4 is fine, I think, from their perspective, and now they can set themselves up to start answering repeated board refills from the zoo. So it was a risk, but it paid off.
Yeah, and Sugoi's going to be in this delicate dance now of how much pressure do I put on the board to be able to actually attack with my minions next turn, because they're going to be worried about Coin Psychic Scream or just not Coin Psychic Scream for the rest of the game. Though they only need to get one connection to face. There's another Mass Hysteria.
Wow.
I think you still have to Scream here though, because if you have I guess it doesn't matter if the 3/2 and the 3/3 go into each other. That's probably okay, but you do get the good result.
Oh wow, yeah, that was a perfect result there for the Oslo Lions. So
look at this, 2 Soulfires in hand now for Swagoi. They are very close. They might even be able to Solarium. Well, Solarium would still not get them a lethal, but they're getting awfully close.
I don't have the list in front of me, but are they playing Leroy in this list?
I believe they are playing Leroy, but it would not be enough for lethal. That would be one off.
Well, it would at least set the Oslo Lions down to lethal range for a double Soulfire.
There's
So
also
it's-
something to be said for putting the whelps into the res pool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it looks like Sugoi is just going to try to build a board here that's enough to get them over the top with these 2 Soulfires, but not enough that that there's a temptation to use the Psychic Scream on it.
Yeah. Like
And-
5 damage is somewhat threatening when you're down to 11. So and
Yeah.
this is a weak board to be screaming. So this may tempt Oslo into an alternate line and hold that scream for something else.
Yeah, and they do want to be careful about not making the board too big because Valencoin Lash will be a concern going into next turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you have to Psychic Scream this board. It's gonna feel really, really bad. But I think that any other play, they were hovering over that Radiant and trying to see if there was another way to do this. But I think that's we could see that's a real big risk. But even without necessarily the double Soulfire plays, you still have Leroy, which is just lethal straight up. But they are going to put this Velen out, it looks like. And give it a
Okay.
and they're going to take out the 3/3 with the Holy Smite, it looks like.
Yeah, this reduces the lethal outs available for Swagoi, but doesn't eliminate them entirely.
Well, this is lethal if the Soulfires cooperate, because Fungalmancer will bring it to 4, and then it's going to be a matter of... they're going to Solarium first to increase the number of cards in hand. I like that a lot.
Yeah, this is very smart. That way, they're much reduced chances of the 2 Soulfires discarding each other. But let's see, one's going to go to face. The other one is still green, so that's going to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Great sequencing, great presence. That not so tall board, Wicked it did exactly what they wanted it to do. It tempted Oslo into not screaming it because it wasn't a whole bunch of stuff, but there were so many lethal outs there for the Zoolock that Oslo had to know it was a big risk to leave those 2 minions on board.
Yeah, I figure that. You can't necessarily fault them for thinking they're at 11, they're down to 9, and it's they're out of range of double Soulfire. It's going to be exactly Leroy Soulfire or some combination of nonsense clearly that could get them into lethal range. But they that there was exactly that combination of nonsense with the Fungalmancer top deck, and we are
off the top.
We are in a priest mirror, though it is not really a mirror.
Not true. Not even close to a mirror, in fact. So yeah, this sets up now one of the matchups we talked about going into this series. It's going to be the Clone Priest versus the Wall Priests, the Inner Fire Priests from Swagoi, and this is there's so many things, so many moving parts in this matchup, Wicked Good, that it's going to be interesting to watch how it plays out.
Yeah, I think because both of these decks can just lethal you out of nowhere. And what's going to happen is that the minions from Swagoi are not going to be particularly threatening on their own, but they are going to be threatening in conjunction with Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, or Topsy Turvy. And so every minion beyond the Cleric and maybe Ziliax is going to be a lethal threat after a certain point, after like turn 5, 6, 7, once those minions can actually even be played from hand, honestly. That Oslo Lions is going to have an answer to, and drawing both the Malygos and the Velen is not going to help that at all.
Oh no, this is a disaster for the Oslo Lions.
And I don't think they had any minions in hand, if I remember correctly.
They did not. They pitched a minion, and Malygos came back, and then they top decked Velen. Oh my goodness! Yeah. And the initial analysis of this is as you said, the trick for the Wall Priest is to just get something to stick. One minion with a big amount of health, have your combo pieces in hand, and bam, you're done. There's no way for the Clone Priests to reactively answer that. They have to proactively do it by way of probably a Psychic Scream, but perhaps other things. But but having Prophet Valen and Malagos in the hand, the win condition now becomes way more difficult for the Oslo Lions to find.
Yeah. You can do it. You can 100% do it, but what you're going to need to do is make sure that you're getting one of those minions killed off, which is not as easy as it sounds. Now, there is a potential to play one a Malagos or a Velen, have it get Psychic Dream back to the deck, and then use Zerek's Cloning Gallery or Shadow Essence in order to get it back out. So but that's a lot of setup.
Right. So really, like, Velen and Malagos end up becoming tempo threats in this situation, because the opposing priest can't risk throwing them back into the deck and having them getting Cloning Gallery or Shadow Essence out and then having some recursion from the pool.
Well, they're a threat in either way, right? They're a threat being resurrected, they're a threat getting summoned.
Exactly.
So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but there are, it's generally the resurrect opportunities are going to be more than the ones to summon from the deck. But 2 Divine Spirits in hand now for Swagoi and Master Oakhart.
Yeah, Master Oakhart is a big deal too.
Yeah, and the problem right now is that Swagoi is letting, they're not drawing aggressively, but they're giving Oslo Lions a turn off, and you never really want to do that against the Cloning Gallery Priest. Oslo Lions may even decide to just drop a Tempo Velen and make Sugoi deal with it, and especially if they don't attack with the Ziliax, which I imagine they wouldn't, then you get into a really awkward decision of, well, I guess it could go either way, right? Because if you're screaming a bear into their deck, that's something that they can summon out that is going to pollute their res.
Yeah,
so there are pros and cons of both, and I'm not really sure what do you trade in and smite this, or do you put out a Tempo Velen, make them scream? Either one.
I like the Tempo Velen. I feel like you really want to save those Holy Smites for the outside chance that they choose to leave the Velen on board, and then that could possibly set up some lethal threats later on.
Yeah.
So looks like that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, they're usually you can get there. I mean, it would be better if they had a Vivid Nightmare in their hand to make that a little bit more comfortable, but you could definitely get there with just Velen and Smite, or just a Mind Blast or whatever. Going to scream just the Velen into the deck. That's interesting.
And we were just discussing that. Like, if you skunk up their recruit pool, with the Witchwood Grizzly, that reduces the chances that they can just OTK combo you, from stuff. And so putting just the Velen back in just resets the Cloning Gallery Priest back to where it wants to be.
Yeah, but you keep in mind that the Wall Priest also has Resurrect cards. So
it wants to kill the Grizzly.
It wants to kill the Grizzly so it can resurrect it too. So there's a consideration there. There's a lot of weird situations that come up between these two decks, because they're both kind of trying to do the same thing, but really in just very, very different ways. And it's I haven't really played a lot of this matchup. I've played enough Priest to know that things are going to get weird before this game is over.
And I mean, that's even just me just kind of thinking it from the Clone Gallery, the Cloning Priest position, having not played too much of this new Wall Priest.
Yeah.
So I didn't super think about the fact that Grizzly has to go into the res pool for part of the Wall Priest win condition. You're absolutely right.
And not only that, but you want multiple, because you're going to be playing Spellstones, and you do have things like Clerics. You want to maximize the chances you're getting big butts to come out of this.
Right, but turn 8 is going to be just Lich King on the Raw.
Army of the Dead.
Ooh.
That's kind of a third Spellstone right there.
Yeah, a little bit. Or a second Oakhart, depending on how you want to perceive it. But Shadow Reaper Anduin going to be a clean answer for the Lich King, and going to say, we're going to start producing some damage to your face. So now Swagoi is a little bit on the clock. And the longer this game goes, the higher chance that the Clone Priest can just combo you out. And that hero power from Shadow Reaper Anduin just accelerates that clock.
Yeah, and this could get, I mean, leaving a Radiant Elemental up against the Cloning Gallery Priest, even with just Velen in the pool, especially with only 2 minions in the pool, is extremely dangerous. Because they can go ahead and Spellstone, Vivid Nightmare, Mind Blast, and it's game over. Now, this Shadow Madness, though, let's see. I'm curious what they're going to do with this.
They've got double health, double health.
Do they have? They can't. They don't have a way to get
double health, double health. No, they're gonna. Oh, they're using it to create a Spellstone effect.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is like an absolute must Psychic Scream board.
And a Death Coil coming off of that. There's a Mind Blast though.
Oh.
That's a lot of damage. That's 10.
Hang on.
7, 14. That's 24 damage. It's not quite lethal, but it's very close.
Yeah.
Well, and because the hero power, that's going to be 10 mana, so they wouldn't use the hero power along with it.
Darkness
but
yeah, do you do it?
I don't know that you. Well, obviously not, because we would have seen that happening. Psychic Scream is also, a reasonable way to answer this. I mean, they also do want to pump up their Spellstone, and if it's not going to be straight lethal, then there are healing effects. But Master Oakheart does not give any damns about your Psychic Scream.
Felon comes out of the deck again.
Oh.
Back
they do run Shadow Essence in the deck. There are some lists that don't, but they do run Shadow Essence in the list. But they're all at the bottom. I would hope
they also run the Cloning Gallery, right?
But I mean, they're gonna have to scream this again. They can't leave this board up. Mass Hysteria is not enough.
And what are the? I mean, I would say what are the odds of them pulling Oakheart, but it's 1 in 20. Off the top of the deck. Roll a d20. Did you get a 20? No, it's not Oakheart. But but Army of the Dead, as you mentioned, Wicked Good, could kind of be a. I
guess you do want to have a Topsy Turvy or an Inner Fire in your hand.
True. You cannot burn one of because then you just don't win the game anymore.
Right. Because if you burn both of those, I mean you can, but it's going to be much more difficult.
Well, that's now both Spellstones committed for Swagoi, but
that is a lot of burn.
Wow, but no way to get it all in one turn for the Lions. So they're kind of right back to where they were before. They have to consider playing some of these either Velen or Malygos as a tempo play.
Yeah, I mean they can Mass Hysteria and use the hero power to help the rest of it along. But they have Spirit Lash, and they need to play spells to get this Spellstone pumped up, because they're going to need to get 4 minions out of the Spellstone.
But then there's a much bigger issue at play here, Wicked Good. They cannot leave the Grizzly up, because two Divine Spirits plus a Topsy is game.
Yeah, I mean they can fit in 2 pings, so they can Mass Hysteria. That'll take it down to either 9 or 8. They can get it down to 4 or 5, and that's still scary, but it's not instant lethal.
Oh, but the Death Coil too.
Oh yeah. So they don't right now. They have a Death Coil, but they don't have a Topsy Turvy Inner. So
no, but
I mean we could see that, but yeah.
But the Oslo Lions have to consider all of these things as they're considering this turn.
Oh, I like this. Okay, I like this a lot, because the Velen does pump up the hero power, as those of us who were alive during the Raza Priest era will remember.
Oh yes.
And so that it doesn't get rid of it, but it does kind of diffuse it a little bit. And again, there is no activator in the hand right now for Swagoi. This Death Coil is going to be used to heal up the bear, it looks like, which I like a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, they just saw Oslo put quite a bit of resources into the bear just to prevent lethal. So they know that that's going to be a limited option for the Lions going forward. So if they can keep that bear healthy and maybe even combine it, they might even throw down this Malshog Enforcer.
And they get to heal too.
Lich King too.
I would kind of love to see them. I would love to see them use this Mass Dispel on the Velen just to diffuse it.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yep.
So yeah, that's gonna be the way to go. And then they drawing 3 cards on this turn too as well.
Yeah, and it looks like they're gonna have to use one of these Divine Spirits to not burn a card, but that's probably not terrible. Or they may not care. I would imagine they'd want to keep from burning the Topsy Turvy or the Inner Fire.
Yeah, they're not going to do it. They're at 9 cards.
Oh, they're at 9 cards. Sorry, counting. Oh, this. Yeah. So this Vivid Nightmare. I could see them just dropping this Malygos and saying go. They could run the Velen into the 311, put down the Malygos, make them deal with it.
Yeah.
If they had a Psychic Screen, well, if they had a Psychic Screen, they wouldn't have screened those minions in. But I mean, if you can do that, getting a Resurrect and getting a Velen or a Malygos with a Radiant Elemental and the amount of burn in hand, I think will get you there. I'm not doing the math yet, but
the Vivid Nightmare is a big part of this the equation here, though. So I gotta believe that they'll want to put the Malygos in play somehow. But no, they're gonna answer the board.
Yeah, well, that does kill off the Velen, which also gets there, or not.
Or just leaves a 7 attack minion on board, which is also fine.
It looks like it's a great result. That's actually probably the worst result because they wanted to kill that off.
This is a lethal setup, though, isn't it? Does if the Vivid Nightmare comes down, does it duplicate the silence effect as well, or does it come back?
Yes, it does.
Oh,
it
does. Okay.
Silence 7/3. So they need to kill this off. I mean, presumably, Twigoi is going to play some sort of a minion,
right?
And then you can run that in. You can run it in, and but they could put out the Moshog Enforcer, which is going to delay this further.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't play the Holy Smite first. So if they can kill off this Velen, so the Spellstone is 7. That will raise the Ziliax, the Radiant Elemental, and the Velen. That will be discounting the Vivid Nightmare to 2, which is 9 mana. And then they can Vivid Nightmare, and then that's going to be 20 from the Mind Blast and 8 from the Holy Smite. They just need to kill off this Velen, which they can do with a trade
hero
chain.
power. Yeah. So they can get there. I mean, just looking at the hand, I'm not sure what else you do, because once again, there's the 214. There's the threat, and they've seen Swagoi try their best to keep that bear alive, and that kind of telegraphs that they have a combo or they're close to it. So there's no way that Oslo is going to want to leave this 214 in play. So they know they're going to have to try to address it in some way, but also set up their own lethal at the same time. So this is just this is quite a puzzle here for the Oslo Lions.
Yeah, I guess you ping off this shield for sure. You can use the Shadow Visions to find something. I don't know what. The Eternal Servitude, they snap it.
There it is.
That's going to make things a lot easier too. You could even you could probably even use a Holy Smite to bring some of this health off if you wanted to.
So this will kill off the Velen. Oh, the damage from the lash allows them to trade off the Velen. That's brilliant. So now it's a 2/2.
It leaves it at 2/2, which is a reasonably innocuous life total. Now, had they had a Topsy-Turvy in hand, that Divine Hymn would have been absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Without it, they don't really have a way to find it.
Right.
And
I think the cleric's out,
it.
so they can try to res a cleric, maybe.
Yeah, they could. I don't know that that's going to be enough
do.
damage at the end of the day. Can't find that either.
They're gonna have to opt for the Lich King. The Lich King's not bad though.
Well, they're gonna get themselves up to full, and this might be enough to get them just out of range.
So
because they're not going to be able to Mind Blast twice with only one Radiant Elemental unless they top deck a second one.
I mean, it depends on what comes out of.
Oh my goodness, that's it. Yeah,
wow,
that's going to be it, because that's going to let them play both Mind Blast. That's going to be more than enough. So they're going to play that. Diamond Spellstone resurrects 3, Vivid Nightmare on the Velen, Holy Smite, Mind Blast, GG, assuming that they see it.
And I think they can do it too, just with the Servitude, right? They can go Servitude, Vivid Nightmare, and then pump out the damage. There it is. So this is going to be 40 damage from the Mind Blast. My goodness, wicked good.
This deck does a lot of damage in a hurry, and it does not care about your taunts.
Wow. So.
But what a game, though. I mean, that back and forth was something. But the thing is that if you give that Cloning Gallery Priest enough time, that's why the aggro decks are so good about it, because it really does need time to set up. But if you give it enough time and let it hang around long enough, it will draw its pieces and it will kill you eventually.
Yeah, we talked about it. The Oslo Lions really wanted to have 2 games for that Cloning Gallery Priest to try and find its win condition, and that's exactly what they did. They lined it up, saved it for last, made sure that they could get a second crack at it against a much slower deck in the Wall Priest, and bada bing, bada boom, they got there. They just needed just that much time to draw enough pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it's hard to overstate like how important that game that turn one or game one win with the odd secret mage over the wall priest was, because had they gotten that wall priest through, this would have been a much different series, I think. And getting that odd secret mage through in order
Yeah.
to get that unfavorable really made the difference in this series.
It just goes to show you how important it is to win uh, early on and win with an unfavorable if you can manage it. So you often see conquest strategies involved, possibly queuing up a polarized or a weaker deck first. But we're right back with our analyst desk. So let's see what our analysts have to say about this matchup. They've been watching along with us, and I know they've been taking great notes. So, Guido, what have you guys have been noticing with this matchup?
Thank you, Cinder, for that lovely introduction here. We in Analyst Desk have been sitting and taking notes and, yeah, chewing bubblegum and having fun here and commenting on things. So, what is the most standout things do you think, Livian and Vida?
I'd like to point out that I feel like Swagoy's play around. I feel like Swagoy had some pretty shaky play with the Wall Priest, especially in the game against the Mage. They had a few plays around this like that involved secrets from the Mage that were really awkward, and they just I don't know, they could have played that better. And I think eventually that meant that they just gave the Mage too much time, and that just came out back to haunt them, because obviously the Priest just became the downfall.
Yeah, and we saw that in all things, like the good plays in general. Any special notes, Livian?
Well, I love how it started with a bang where the Wall Priest lost and ended with incredible strategic play where the Wall Priest lost. So I guess our lesson for today is Wall Priest is very good, but maybe not against Oslo. Congratulations to them. It was an incredible series.
Yeah, this War Priest, it's a new addition to the meta. It's basically the Jon Snow priest, like protecting from the White Walkers, but it doesn't seem like it had the greatest matchups coming into all of this, though. But we got to see a deck that you've been waiting for a couple of days to see, didn't we?
Oh, well, yeah, the odd mage did definitely not disappoint. Did you see that? What was it? 12 damage hit in the face at the end? That's just a better Pyroblast, man. How can you not like that deck?
That
It's
was
not even
lovely.
it's not even skill. You just top deck what you need and then win. But there was skill involved for sure, because the secret choice with caster vision or analyst vision in this case, we knew playing mirror entity was better than counterspell. But of course they didn't play counterspell and got punished with the Ziliax. But in the end, I think Oslo played that game very well. Oslo Lions.
Yeah, it
I
was
think
very
just
interesting to see. Yeah, one of the fun things that we discussed a little bit beforehand as well is the resurgence of the Sue lock. Anything to say about that, Peter?
I mean, I love Sue. Sue is like my all-time favorite archetype outside of Face Hunter, but I think just overall, like, I mean, it ended up getting the win, which, I mean, it got the win, it got it done, but it wasn't pretty, right? It lost the game as well, which just never got going. So it's just like it's really feast or famine, that deck, because sure, sometimes you get Kelsif on turn two, you just get the insane of of flaming on one, you just do whatever appeases you to you. But like we even saw like when they had that flaming on turn one, where they just like still just got torn apart by the Hunter. Just I mean that big ass hyena just came in and destroyed their world, right? And we also saw that like the Hunter mirror as well was also an interesting thing to point out, I feel like.
Yeah, and we saw, of course, both the hunters doing what hunters does best, building hyenas and getting bored and putting a bunch of beasts on it and having crackling razor maws, being with rush and lifesteal and everything, running back and forth. And it was a fun series, and it really showed the expertise of both these two esport organizations.
I think
So
that feast or famine is a very good way to describe this whole series, to be honest. Especially Swagoy's decks, like Zoo, feast or famine. It wins or it loses, but it does what it does convincing. For Wall Priest, apparently the same goes. If you don't get those combo cards, then of course you lose. And Rexar is a bit more stable, the hunter, but I think Swagoy took a risk and it didn't pay off in the end.
I think that also what I'm happy about that obviously we saw with the first series of the day that we saw a hunter mirror where the one hunter just had Rexar and the other hunter didn't, but here we actually got to see like a specific Deathstalker Rexar mirror, and actually I think there was a lot of very interesting things that point out. And obviously at the end of the day, like the Rexar were just like it was just super important. I feel like also we saw the thing now with like double Dire Frenzy coming back into the meta, being included in pretty much all the mirrors on the decks. I mean, it's a card that has been tagged with like just one copy and sometimes as well, and it became like really huge because obviously those razor malls were just absolutely insane. Like they're just big at the end of the day, right? Just big dumb buddies.
Literally.
Yeah. So that was it for us from the casters and analysts today. We're gonna take a quick look at the scores before we close it out for today. And as been mentioned earlier as well, Interpret Fox took the 4-0, or they won 3-1 over Helsinki Reds, going up with a clean slate to 4-0, which with my calculation should be their first ones to qualify for playoffs. That's a huge win for this team.
They definitely know obviously that they will still be playing out to see if they can get first or second seed in the playoffs as well, but kind of just trying to secure that semi-final berth. But something that I want to take a quick note of is the fact that we saw Nordawind lose 2-3 to Epic Esports, and maybe that sub for Epic Esports this week has just been like what they need, right? Just to see like they've been playing much better this weekend. So
yeah, it's been doing great, and it's as we said, like this is Hearthstone, and there is a lot of good players that have been coming up over the years, and a lot of them in different organizations, and maybe all these heads thinks better than the way they do by themselves. Maybe they don't have the greatest achievements like Norwin's players have, but they looks like, at least from the scores we see on the scoreboard here, that they are doing great together. So
yeah, and a quick F in the chat for Ends, who now are 0-4 and will have a very hard time, if not impossible, for them to make that top 6 cut. But obviously, they will be playing next week as well. Just trying to see if they can throw a spanner in the works. Just trying to play a little bit for that pride. And obviously, what I'm like for me is the biggest surprise of all this: the fact that Norway is down at 1-3 now. And for me personally, they are like, for me, they were the favorites going into this together with Helsinki Reds. And I mean, obviously, they had to face each other off against each other at some point, and Reds won. But it's still just seeing Norway in a team tournament being 1-3 just feels wrong to me. Like,
Yeah, I think it's
yeah, and it's interesting to see, as you say, as like it's these upsets, but this is what happens. We just got the last score here with Gamers Origins and Royal Blue. The brackets haven't been updated yet, but they should be just waiting for them to update. But the Royal Blue took the 3-2 over Gamers Origin, meaning our top 3 contestants so far is Interpreted Fox, Helsinki Red, Royal Blue Esports, with Gamers Origin, M&M Gaming, and Epic Esports rounding out the top 6 as it currently
and
stands.
of course Oslo Lions. Don't forget them.
Yeah, which won now and will then make it into the top 6. So there's still 2 more weeks left of this Swiss before we crown a winner, and it's the only one that actually secured their spot.
Minor correction:
is the
we have
Foxes.
we have 2 rounds of Swiss left, but only
Yeah.
1 week of Swiss, obviously, because the way that
Yeah.
works is we play 2 rounds of Swiss every week, and obviously that was played out at every Saturday at 6 p.m. is when they start CET. That is.
Yeah, so that was it from us. This time there were 2 nice rounds of Swiss from these house rivalries. Follow us on Twitter for more information during the week, and for maybe you have a team that wants to qualify for a different region, for instance, in the future. Just stay tuned and tune in next Saturday.